Chapter 1239. Tao Lord, 100 Grade 6 elixirs and 100 Tao Lord dermic weapons are already the limit of our sect. The sect master of Mystic Firmament Divine Cult lamented internally and could not help but say, 8,000 Grade 6 elixirs and superior grade Tao Lord dermic weapons? We really can't take that out. Su Zimo said, it's fine if you can't take it out. You can use spirit herbs, immortal fruits and treasures as replacements. At the side, Xiaoning said at the right time, spirit herbs and materials such as the yellow dragon heaven grass, mystic Yin bamboo, 10,000 year lingji, silverlight flower, true essence lotus and skunda fruit will do as well. Xiaoning was an elixir refinement grandmaster to begin with and was naturally familiar with the main materials required for grade 6 elixirs. Su Zimo said, Mystic Firmament Divine Cult and Dragon Tiger Sect are both upper sections. Dragon Tiger Sect has more than 10,000 years of foundation and these are not all. Mystic Firmament Divine Cult can't take it out? The sect master of Mystic Firmament Divine Cult wanted to cry but no tears came out. Although Mystic Firmament Divine Cult could take it out, it would definitely be a huge loss. They had to hand over half of their foundation that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years just like that. It was way too ruthless. The Patriarch of Stellar Luna Sect and the others were shocked as well. This time round, Mystic Firmament Divine Cult would definitely suffer a huge loss. They would not be able to recover without at least 10,000 years. Suddenly, the Patriarch of Dark Ghost Sect said, if we hand over these items, the feud between Dark Ghost Sect and Tao Lord, naturally, we'll write it off. Su Zimo said indifferently, as long as you guys don't provoke me in the future, I won't find trouble with you guys. Alright. The Patriarch of Dark Ghost Sect nodded. With that promise of yours, Tao Lord Dark Ghost Sect will go all out. Take it as a congratulatory gift for fellow Taoist Araki Takashi's advancement to the Dharma characteristic realm. With the Patriarch of Dark Ghost Sect taking the lead, Seven Kills Sect, Blood Mist Sect and Yuan clan agreed without hesitation. The sect master of Mystic Firmament Divine Cult could only submit. Tao Lord, we definitely won't be able to take out so many treasures right now. We've got to return to the sect to prepare them. I'll give you a month's time. Su Zimo replied slowly, if it's beyond that deadline, I'll pay a personal visit. The sect master of Mystic Firmament Divine Cult laughed dryly. This was a blatant threat. After Su Zimo paid a visit to the Dragon Tiger Sect, it was removed from the northern region. Could the Mystic Firmament Divine Cult withstand this? Tao Lord Araki Takashi truly lives up to his reputation. Despite facing so many sects and factions alone, he was still able to control the situation. He's even more terrifying than I imagined. One of the Stellar Luna sect's elders sighed with emotion as he transmitted a message through his spiritual consciousness. The Patriarch of the Stellar Luna sect also transmitted his voiceover. The Dragon Tiger Sect, one of the 10 upper sects of the North region, has been removed from the list. I'm afraid Misty Peak is about to rise. With so many resources and treasures gathered at Misty Peak, this sect's foundation is no weaker than ours. That's right. What Misty Peak lacks now is a body integration mighty figure. If we have a conjoint body mighty figure, there's a high chance of us becoming one of the new upper sects during the upper sects meet. Tao Lord Araki Takashi alone is comparable to 10 conjoint body mighty figures. The Patriarch of Dark Ghost Sect and the others did not linger at Dragon Tiger Sect for long before leaving dejectedly. Under Su Zimo's aura, they felt extremely repressed and could only leave as soon as possible. As for the Patriarch of Stellar Luna Sect, the Valley Master of Blaze Columbus Valley, the Master of the Murong family and the others, they stayed at Dragon Tiger Sect for a short period of time before leaving. During this month, Su Zimo stayed in Dragon Tiger Sect the entire time and did not leave. At the end of the month, Dark Ghost Sect, Seven Kills Sect, Blood Mist Sect, Mystic Firmament Divine Cult and Yuan clan visited one after another and offered 1,000 grade 6 elixirs, 1,000 superior grade Tao Lord dermic weapons and 10,000 tons of spirit stones. Su Zimo handed all those treasures to Misty Peak. These things were not enough to catch his eye. For dermic weapons, he had the Creation Lotus Platform, Mystic Magnet Mountain and Mingwang Prayer Beads. Furthermore, his Qinglian true body was comparable to Khanate Dao Lord Dermic weapons. The only thing that Su Zimo was interested in were the cultivation techniques and secret manuals left behind by Dragon Tiger sect. Those things were useful for his main body to deduce Wu Dao, and he moved all of them to Misty Peak. After that, Su Zimo stayed at Misty Peak temporarily. Monkey and the others ran to Wild Lion Ridge and continued to dominate. A year later, Xiaoning set off and prepared to return to Elixir Yang sect of the Middle Continent. Night Spirit offered to escort her. Actually, Xiaoning had already cultivated to the perfected Void Reversion realm and was able to protect herself given her current combat strength. However, she did not refuse and agreed with a smile. Su Zimo had long sensed that there was something fishy between the two of them and did not stop them. All these years, as her brother, he had not taken good care of Xiaoning, and it was all thanks to Night Spirit. Furthermore, it was enough as long as both parties were willing. After Xiaoning left, Su Zimo continued to cultivate in Misty Peak. In the blink of an eye, another 5 years passed. For the past 5 years, Misty Peak had been extremely peaceful. After the Battle of Dragon Tiger sect, everyone knew that Araki Takashi had advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm. With the old monk of the Dragon Burial Valley backing him, no one dared to provoke him. However, there were many changes in the cultivation world. The most obvious change was that everyone was practicing martial arts and cultivating. Over the years, Misty Peak alone had recruited thousands of cultivators who cultivated Wu Dao. As for the cultivation world of the North region, a series of changes had happened because of Su Zimo's rise as well. Dragon Tiger sect was removed. Misty Peak rose with the momentum and attracted many cultivators who admired it. Perfected being Jin Dan, Jining Jinjuan, Void Reversions, and even Dharma Daojun wanted to join the sect. Of course, there were no conjoint body mighty figures. Firstly, Misty Peak did not have any conjoint body mighty figures to begin with. Secondly, conjoint body mighty figures roamed unhindered and were not restricted by sections. Even super sects might not have any resources suitable for conjoint body mighty figures to cultivate, let alone Misty Peak. If they wanted to improve, they might as well explore some ancient ruins and cave abodes of predecessors. They might be able to obtain some opportunities. Regarding the Great Zhou dynasty. Actually, more than 10 years ago, the Great Zhou dynasty had already annexed Great Yu, Great Xia, and Great Shang to unify the North region. Over the years, there were no wars between the dynasties, and the citizens rested and cultivated martial arts. Under the governance of Ji Yaoxue, the wounds left behind by the Witch Gu calamity gradually healed and a peaceful and prosperous scene appeared. This day, Su Zimo sensed something in seclusion and suddenly woke up. Before long, there was a knock on the door. "Come in," Su Zimo said. Although he had left the sect for many years, his cave abode had always been preserved for him. The door of the cave abode opened and Nianqi walked in. "Young master," a spirit crane flew in from outside. "It's looking for you." Su Zimo frowned slightly and received the spirit crane. There was a faint fragrance on the spirit crane. It was clear that it was made by a woman. Su Zimo swept his gaze. The address on the spirit crane indicated that it was the Middle Continent. Su Zimo opened the spirit crane and read through its contents before long, murmuring softly, "To think that it's her." "Who is it?" Nianqi asked curiously. Su Zimo smiled. "She can be considered as an old friend that I've met once." Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo stood up and crushed the spirit crane into dust with a single swipe of his palm. "I've got to go. I'm making a trip to the Middle Continent." Chapter 1240. What exactly happened that requires you to make a trip personally, young master? Nianqi asked curiously. Su Zimo said, "Something happened over at Brother Yan's side." Nianqi was surprised. "Shura Yan Beichen?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded and recalled the past. After the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, the Dharma Daojun of many sects and factions arrived together and ascended 100 Refinement sect, prepared to cause trouble for him. When Shura heard about this, he rushed over without hesitation. At that time, the Dharma Daojun had already been famous for a long time. Among them, There were even titular disciples like Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was the number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was the second on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. However, Shura had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and was fearless as he fought against the 9 Tao Lords outside 100 Refinement sect. That battle could be said to be earth-shaking. Among the 9 Tao Lords, 6 were killed by Shura. Although a large part of the reason was because Tao Lord Immortal Sword was severely injured when he fought against Hakka Dojin in 100 Refinement sect, the powerful methods displayed by Shura were still shocking. Su Zimo watched the battle not far away. Even now, that battle was still unforgettable. At that time, he even asked about Shura's injuries. However, Shura brushed it aside casually. To think that the injuries left behind by Shura in that battle had yet to heal even now. One of the messages on the spirit crane was about Shura's essence spirit being injured. It was extremely difficult to heal an injured essence spirit. Later on, Su Zimo caused a huge disaster in the Tao inheritance ground and the situation was critical. Many cultivators of 100 Refinement sect suggested drawing a clear line with Su Zimo. As for Shura, he ignored the injuries of his essence soul and wanted to protect Su Zimo in the 100 Refinement sect. Admiring Shura's temperament, an elder of the Danyang sect gave the 9 Transformations Soul Return pill that he had kept for many years to Shura. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return elixir was an ancient elixir that had long been lost and was extremely rare. It was the best healing elixir for the essence spirit. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a priceless treasure. Shura took the 9 Transformations Soul Return pill, but he didn't take it himself. Instead, he gave it to someone else. It was this person who had sent out this messenger spirit crane. 3 of the 9 Tao Lords survived the battle outside 100 Refinement sect. Apart from the 2 titular disciples who managed to escape, Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Tao Lord Cloud Rain, this person was the 3rd to survive. Sword sect, Qin Pianran. Back then, Qin Pianran was betrayed by Tao Lord Immortal Sword and wanted to die. Although Shura had never said it, Su Zimo could tell that Shura was compassionate. Shura, who attained his Tao through killing and had a heartless saber technique, was a sentimental person. However, Tao Lord Immortal Sword, who was known to be righteous and righteous, was a heartless person. That was truly ironic. Su Zimo had long sensed that Shura treated Qin Pianran differently. However, he had not expected that Shura would give Qin Pianran such a precious elixir as the 9 Revolutions Soul Return elixir. Of course, the reason why he sent out this spirit crane was not because of Shura's injuries. It was because there was another monster incarnate in Shura sect of the Fiend sects who wanted to replace Yen Beichen's title as Shura and become the new titular disciple of Shura sect. The titular disciple sent the challenge letter to Shura. Given Shura's current condition, he might be able to win against an ordinary Dharma Daojun. However, he would definitely lose against this monster incarnate of the Fiend sects. Qin Pianran hoped that Su Zimo could head to the Middle Continent and help Shura tide through this calamity. At the end of the spirit crane, Qin Pianran even said that he sent the spirit crane behind Shura's back. Given Shura's personality, even if she encountered such a calamity, she would not ask for help. However, she was worried and did not want anything to happen to Shura. She had long severed ties with the Immortal sects and Sword sect. As for Shura, he had always been alone and did not have any brothers or friends. However, he had a group of enemies. After thinking about it, the only person who could help Shura was Su Zimo. That was the reason why she sent out this spirit crane. When Su Zimo received the spirit crane, he did not hesitate and decided to rush to the Middle Continent immediately. Notwithstanding the fact that Shura was in trouble, if he knew that Shura's essence spirit injury had yet to heal, he would have set off long ago to search for medicine that could heal Shura. When do you plan to leave, young master? Nianqi asked. Right now. Su Zimo was already heading out of the cave abode. Where are you going, young master? I'll accompany you. Outside the cave abode, Momo rushed over as well. There will always be some trivial matters along the way. I can help out if I'm by your side, young master. Su Zimo could sense that Momo was just reluctant to leave him. There's no need, Su Zimo shook his head. Both of you stay here. In a few days, a 5- or 6-year-old child will come to Misty Peak. Just stay by his side. Momo froze for a moment. Before she could react, Su Zimo had already leaped into the air and disappeared from the spot with lightning crackling around his body. Worried about Shura, Su Zimo was prepared to rush to the middle continent at the fastest speed possible. What's the child you're talking about, young master? Momo blinked with a confused expression and looked at Nianqi. I don't know either, Nianqi shook his head. We'll know in a few days. Let's just wait here. 5 days later, at the foot of Misty Peak, a 5- or 6-year-old child arrived. He had delicate features and clear eyes that were as deep as the ocean, as though they contained endless mysteries. Where did this child come from? It's really not easy for this child to make it here unscathed in this deep forest. At the entrance of Ethereal Peak, a few Foundation establishment cultivators who were guarding the entrance looked over with surprised expressions. Standing in front of the entrance, the child gazed at a gigantic stone gate not far away in a daze. Are you here to seek a master at Misty Peak? A Foundation establishment cultivator chuckled and followed the child's gaze. That stone gate is used to test one's spirit root. I heard that when Senior Araki Takashi of our sect joined, he blew up the stone gate. This stone gate was even built later on. Hearing these discussions, the child recalled the past, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The fact that this child could make it here means that he's fated with Misty Peak. Should we test his spirit root first? A Foundation establishment cultivator said, Child, go through that stone gate and let us take a look. The child smiled but didn't say anything. He walked directly toward the stone door. There was no reaction from the stone gate. A few Foundation establishment cultivators shook their heads slightly with disappointed expressions. One of them said, It doesn't matter if you don't have a spirit root. Even if you can't cultivate to become an immortal, you can still cultivate the Wu Dao. Child, I'm a Wu Dao cultivator. That person flashed his muscular arms and said, I've already cultivated to the 3rd transformation of the Wu Dao, copper skin and iron bones. Even superior-grade weapons can't hurt me. As he said that, the cultivator took out a saber and slashed at his arm. However, it only left a white mark. With a smug expression, the cultivator handed the saber to the child. Child, why don't you try slashing me? How old is this child? Can he even lift that saber? Someone beside him shook his head gently. At this moment, the child took the long saber, and with a light pinch of his fair and tender palm, the long saber in his hand was directly crushed into an iron ball. Thereafter, he rubbed his hands together. The iron ball turned into grains of iron sand and scattered down. He could crush iron like mud. The cultivators at the mountain gate were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with shock, and they could not say a single word. Chapter 1241. That saber was a middle-grade spirit weapon, but it was crushed into sand by the child's tender palms just like that. Many cultivators looked at the child as though they were looking at a ghost. Could that child be transformed from a fiend demon? A thought flashed through the mind of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Right then, 2 figures sped over from Misty Peak like a golden couple. They were Momo and Nianqi. For the past few days, the 2 of them had been standing guard near the entrance and rushed over the moment they heard some commotion. When their gazes landed on the child, they could not help but shudder. The child gave them an extremely familiar feeling. If they focused their attention, they would be able to tell that the child's features were extremely similar to Su Zimo's. It was just that they could not tell because he was not fully grown yet. The child was Wu Dao's true body, also known as Su Zimo's true body. After 6 years of cultivation at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, the true body had already cultivated to the perfected Wu Dao's 9th transformation, the power of Dragon Elephant. Given his true body strength, he could even shatter Khanate spirit weapons, let alone a middle-grade spirit weapon. The descent of the true body was an anomaly to begin with. It was not part of the heavenly secrets or reincarnation. The true body inherited everything from Su Zimo and specialized in cultivating Wu Dao. However, after Wu Dao's 9th transformation, he could only continue to deduce if he wanted to continue cultivating Wu Dao. Neither Qinglian's true body nor the true bodies of dragons had the energy to do so. In terms of comprehension of Wu Dao's perception, he was definitely not as suitable as the true body. Therefore, the true body left the Dragon Burial Valley and arrived at Misty Peak. He was prepared to cultivate at Misty Peak for a period of time and memorize the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Misty Peak before deducing them. "Young master?" Momo called out tentatively. "It's me," the true body nodded. Although he was only 6 years old, the aura he exuded was exactly the same as Su Zimo's, without the slightest bit of childishness. "I will be cultivating at Misty Peak for a while before leaving for Pingyang Town. Do you want to follow me?" The main body looked at Momo and asked. "Sure." Momo agreed immediately. He did not have many familiar faces on Misty Peak. Instead, he felt more comfortable staying in Pingyang Town. In his heart, he always felt that Pingyang Town was his home. The original body also planned to return to the starting point of cultivation and return to that courtyard to continue deducing Wu Dao and perfecting Wu Dao. That courtyard had a special meaning to Su Zimo. Zhongzhou. Su Zimo did not sleep or rest at all. From the time he left Misty Peak to the time he crossed the northern region and entered the central region, it only took him 3 days. That speed was comparable to conjoint body mighty figures. Although the news on the spirit crane said that the monster incarnate of the fiend sex would challenge Shura a month later, Su Zimo was still worried and rushed over early. Su Zimo determined the direction and continued on his way. A day later, Su Zimo arrived in the depths of a mountain range and gazed at the dense bamboo forest before him. He descended and paused for a moment before entering. In the bamboo forest, there was only the sound of the bamboo leaves rustling in the breeze. It was peaceful and peaceful. Before long, Su Zimo's gaze pierced through the shadows of the bamboo and caught sight of a spacious clearing where a simple wooden hut sat. A figure leaned against the door. The figure's black hair was casually draped over his shoulders, and he had a cold expression. There was a jar of strong alcohol by his feet and a long saber with a blood chi laid across his knees. It was Shura Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen had just raised the jar of alcohol and was about to drink it when he suddenly frowned. As though he sensed something, he said indifferently, "Hatred, the month isn't up yet. You're early." Yen Beichen's essence spirit was injured, but he could still sense that someone was spying on him from the bamboo forest. However, he could not sense who it was. Su Zimo strode out of the bamboo forest and arrived before the empty space, smiling gently at Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen was stunned for a moment. Immediately after, his eyes revealed the joy of reuniting after a long time and he could not help but laugh. "Ha, so it's Brother Su." "Brother Yen." Su Zimo called out and strode forward. "Come and sit." Yen Beichen tugged at Su Zimo's arm and pulled him to sit down. He took out another jar of strong alcohol from his storage bag and handed it to Su Zimo with a smile. "I was just worried that no one would drink with me, and here you are. You're really timely." The two of them clinked their jars together and drank a mouthful of the strong alcohol. "I haven't congratulated you properly for establishing the Wu Dao. Now, let's drink until we're drunk." Yen Beichen laughed once more. Su Zimo lamented internally. After so many years, it was clear that Yen Beichen had changed a lot. There was a human aura around him, and the initial stench of blood was so faint that it was almost indiscernible. If he was not wrong, this change should be attributed to a single person. Right then, a white-bloused woman walked out of the wooden house. Her skin was fair and her eyes were watery. Her brows were raised slightly and she exuded a heroic aura. Su Zimo stood up and pretended to be surprised. "Isn't this fellow Taoist Qin of Sword Sect?" Since Qin Pianran sent him a message behind Shura's back, Su Zimo naturally could not expose it and pretended that he did not know anything. Qin Pianran smiled gently with a hint of gratitude in her eyes. Just as she was about to speak, Yen Beichen waved it off. "Brother Su, stop pretending. Pianran must have asked you to come, right?" Su Zimo was stunned. Yen Beichen said, "The timing of your arrival is too coincidental. I reckon that Pianran asked you to come behind my back because she was worried about me." Yen Beichen was smart. He guessed it the moment he saw Su Zimo. Beichen, I'm sorry. Qin Pianran lowered her head slightly. Aye. Su Zimo knew that there was no need to continue hiding this matter. Hence, he nodded. Fellow Taoist Qin is also worried about your safety. There's no need to blame her. Why would I blame Pianran for worrying about me? Yen Beichen laughed and turned to tug at Qin Pianran's hand. It's been a long time since we've met, brother. Now that we're reunited, I'm delighted. I can't even thank you enough. Qin Pianran blushed. She was embarrassed that the two of them were so intimate in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled. Seems like you've been living quite well all these years, brother. I'm a little envious that you have someone accompanying you every day. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo continued, however, there's something I have to tell you, brother. Why didn't you tell me that your essence spirit was injured? It's useless to tell you, Shura shook her head. This injury can't be healed. When he heard that, Qin Pianran's expression darkened. It's all my fault. If I hadn't consumed the 9 Revolutions soul return elixir back then, Beichen's injuries would have healed a long time ago. It's fine. Aren't I doing fine now? Yen Beichen waved it off nonchalantly. But, your cultivation in the future. Qin Pianran wanted to say something but hesitated, afraid that he would agitate Yen Beichen. It would be difficult for one's cultivation to improve with an injured essence spirit. Who doesn't die? Even if they cultivate to the conjoint body mighty figure realm, they'll still die after 20,000 years. Yen Beichen said, as long as I'm with you, a single day is equivalent to 10,000 years. I still have thousands of years of lifespan. In that case, I'll live longer than Mahayana patriarchs. Qin Pianran's eyes were bloodshot as he lowered his head in silence. Chapter 1242. Su Zimo asked, is the monster incarnate of Shura sect the hatred that Brother Yen mentioned just now the hatred? Yes. Yen Beichen nodded with a grim expression. Tao Lord Hatred became famous much earlier than me and obtained half of the Hatred Sutra. His combat strength is heaven-defying and he's invincible in the fiend sex. It was the Hatred Sutra. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. Half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky of the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra had memories of the Hatred Sutra. The Hatred Sutra was created by the most terrifying fiend emperor of the ancient era who was known as the Fiend Emperor Hatred. The fact that the Fiend Emperor was known as the Emperor of the Fiend sex was proof of his strength. Legend has it that the Fiend Emperor Hatred was initially unknown. Later on, he encountered a huge change that caused his temperament to change drastically. He hated the heavens, earth, all living beings and everything in the world. Against that intense hatred, the Emperor erupted completely and slaughtered immortals, Buddhas and the primordial 9 races in a ferocious manner. Eventually, he created the shocking Hatred Sutra. That cultivation technique was known as the #1 secret manual of the fiend sex, and its might was imaginable. Although the Fiend Emperor Hatred was invincible, his life was extremely tragic and he spent it in hatred. Even though he was conferred the title of an ancient emperor, he did not have a single kin or close friend by his side. His ending was rather tragic as well. His hatred eventually reached its limits and he even began to hate himself. Eventually, after the ancient war ended, he committed suicide in Tianhuang mainland, leaving behind a pitiful legend. Countless people lamented that a fiend emperor of a generation would end up in such a state. Yen Beichen continued, Tao Lord Hatred accidentally barged into a tomb and obtained half of the Hatred Sutra. From then on, he rose and established his Tao title, Hatred. Everyone knows what he's thinking. He wants to inherit everything of the ancient Fiend Emperor and become the new Fiend Emperor Hatred. Just half of the Hatred Sutra was enough to make him invincible in the fiend sex. It was clear how terrifying that cultivation technique was. For these paragons and monster incarnates to be able to cultivate to this level, they had many opportunities and encounters. Su Zimo was not the only one. Yen Beichen said, later, I joined the Shura sect and obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance and many other opportunities. I comprehended the Shura Sutra and reached the Void Return realm. During the battle for the title of Shura, I fought against Li Hen, who was still at the return to void stage at that time, and I was lucky enough to win by half a move. These past events were calmly spoken by Yan Beichen, but Su Zimo could feel the killing intent and intensity of the past from every word he spoke. Su Zimo knew Yan Beichen quite well. Only 2 people had obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance. One was him, and the other was Yan Beichen. Yan Beichen's talent was in no way inferior to his. Upon entering the Dharma characteristic realm, Yan Beichen was able to condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 85 feet tall. That was enough to show how strong Yan Beichen was. Even so, Yan Beichen only won by half a move back then. Yan Beichen continued. After the battle for the title of Shura ended, Li Hen disappeared and never appeared again. No one knew where he went. That was until more than 10 years ago when Li Hen appeared and shocked the entire fiend sex. Su Zimo had a vague guess and murmured, "Could it be?" Yan Beichen nodded. He obtained the Complete Hatred Sutra. The birth of the Hatred Sutra. This meant that a new fiend emperor Li Hen was about to rise. When Li Hen returned, he was already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Starting from Shura sect, he swept through the Dharma characteristic paragons of the 7 fiend sects. The titular disciple of Illusion Fiend cult was defeated in less than 10 moves. After that, the other titular disciples of the fiend sects fell silent and avoided fighting. Li Hen was conferred as the number 1 saber of the fiend sects. If he had inherited the Complete Hatred Sutra, it would not be surprising for him to possess such combat strength. Yan Beichen had a grim expression. Even if I'm in my peak condition, I'm probably not a match for him, let alone the fact that my essence spirit is injured and my combat strength is greatly reduced. Now that Li Hen has returned, no one can stop him. It was no wonder Yan Beichen said that. Back then, when the 2 of them fought, Li Hen, who had only comprehended half of the Hatred Sutra, lost to him by a single move. How terrifying would Li Hen be now that he had obtained the Complete Hatred Sutra? There was no fear in Su Zimo's eyes. After experiencing the Tao inheritance ground, the transformation of nearly 5,000 years of cultivation and the fusion of more than 30 ancient inheritances, Su Zimo believed that he could suppress everyone of the same cultivation realm and sweep through all strong enemies. Instead, he was eager to witness the number 1 Fiend Sutra of the ancient era. Su Zimo asked in a deep voice, "What's the height of Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic?" Tao Lord Hatred was already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Even if he knew that Tao Lord Hatred had condensed a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic, Su Zimo was not surprised. "I don't know." Unexpectedly, Yan Beichen shook his head and gave such an answer. Su Zimo was stunned. Yan Beichen said, "That's why he's terrifying. Ever since he returned, he fought several battles and suppressed many Dharma characteristic monster incarnates of the fiend sections. However, he has never used his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic." Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. It was normal for him to not use his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to suppress an ordinary Dharma Daojun. However, Tao Lord Hatred had once suppressed the titular disciple of Illusion Fiend cult. The fact that he could suppress a titular disciple of Illusion Fiend cult without using his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was terrifying. Pianran, actually, there's no need for you to alarm Zimo. After a while, Yan Beichen smiled. That's because I didn't intend to fight hatred to begin with. Qin Pianran and Su Zimo were stunned for a moment and were confused. Yan Beichen explained, "Hatred wants to challenge me for nothing more than the title of Shura. I've already decided to give up the title of Shura." Yan Beichen caressed the saber on his knees gently. "If Hatred wants the title of Shura and the saber of Shura, I'll give it to him." Su Zimo was silent. Under normal circumstances, given Yan Beichen's personality, he would not show weakness even if he was injured. To think that he would make such a choice. However, on second thought, it was understandable for Yan Beichen to make such a choice. That was because Shura had something to worry about. When Shura who attained his Tao through killing had something to worry about, he would no longer be Shura. It had to be said that Yan Beichen had changed a lot over the years. "Are you willing?" Su Zimo asked. Yan Beichen smiled. It's just a title. It's just that this Shura has accompanied me in battles for many years and I can't bear to part with it. However, it doesn't matter. Yen Beichen's tone was magnanimous and carefree. It was a true sense of letting go. Zimo, I'm tired. I don't want to continue fighting and killing in the cultivation world. Yen Beichen said, all these years, Pian Ran and I have been in this bamboo forest, away from the hustle and bustle of the world. We've obtained a tranquility that we've never experienced before and we're very happy about it. From now on, without the restrictions of the Shura, Pian Ran and I will find a paradise and live in seclusion. No matter what tribulations or battles are out there, they have nothing to do with us anymore. Yen Beichen's words meant that he wanted to let go of everything and not fight with hatred. Neither did he want Su Zimo to fight hatred in his place. I understand, Su Zimo nodded. First, I respect your choice. Chapter 1243. For the next period of time, Su Zimo stayed in the bamboo forest and was in no hurry to leave. Although Yen Beichen had already decided to withdraw from the fight in the cultivation world, Su Zimo was still worried about the injury to the latter's essence spirit. The next day he sent out a few messenger spirit cranes. They flew towards Elixir Yang Sect, 100 Refinement Sect, Chiguramon, Puppet Sect, and Misty Peak. Su Zimo's family and friends were among those sects and factions. Half a month later, those sects and factions sent back news one after another, but none of them had any good solutions. Although Qin Pian Ran did not say anything, he could not conceal his disappointment. Don't be anxious, Su Zimo said, there's no news from Xiaoning yet. She's already become the titular disciple of Elixir Yang Sect. I'm sure she has a solution. Another 5 days passed. Elixir Yang Sect's spirit crane flew into the bamboo forest. Qin Pian Ran hurried over and opened the spirit crane impatiently. Essence spirit injuries are extremely difficult to heal and the best elixir for treatment is the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. However, that elixir has long been lost and Elixir Yang Sect doesn't have it either. At that point, Qin Pian Ran's eyes dimmed. A large part of the reason why Yen Beichen ended up in his current state was because he wanted to save her. She felt extremely guilty. Su Zimo removed a small bottle tied to the spirit crane's feet. These are the 7 elixirs that Xiaoning sent over. They have some healing effects on the essence spirit as well. You can give them a try first. Those elixirs were definitely not comparable to the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. However, they could only give it a try. For the next few days, Yen Beichen tried to consume an elixir every day. However, even after trying all 7 types of spiritual pills, the injury to his primordial spirit showed no signs of improvement. First, fellow Taoist Qin, don't be too anxious, Su Zimo said. I've already gotten Misty Peak to pay attention to the various auction houses and trading markets. If there's news of the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir, I'll definitely help you guys find it. That's the only way. Qin Pian Ran sighed inwardly. Another 3 days passed. On this day, Su Zimo and the other 2 were casually chatting in the wooden house. Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look. What happened? Qin Pian Ran asked and subconsciously followed Su Zimo's gaze. There was a figure standing in the bamboo forest. Qin Pian Ran trembled all over and cried out in alarm. She was the Dharma Dao Jun of Sword Sect to begin with. Be it in terms of combat strength or temperament, she was superior and would not lose her composure even if she met conjoint body mighty figures or Mahayana patriarchs. However, this figure was simply too terrifying. Just by standing there, it was like a huge black hole, emitting endless hatred, as if it could devour everything. Such hatred could even affect a cultivator's mind. If one's Tao heart wasn't firm enough and was tainted by this type of hatred, it would completely cripple one. One would be defeated without even fighting. Tao Lord hatred. Su Zimo was the only one who could remain calm and composed in the face of such hatred. Even Yen Beichen frowned. Su Zimo's gaze was calm as he scrutinized Tao Lord hatred. Tao Lord hatred had a medium figure and wore black robes. His black hair draped over his shoulders and his eyes were deep and dark. He walked over slowly with a saber shrouded in fiend chi in his hands. The saber streaked across the ground silently, leaving a clear mark. Su Zimo's pupils constricted slightly when he looked at the saber. That saber was terrifying. Even he felt a wave of apprehension when he saw the hatred that was condensed around it. "Hatred, you sure are punctual," Yen Beichen said. "I said it was a month, and it's a month. Not a single day off." Dao Lord Hatred chuckled and did not reply. Without pausing, he walked straight into the wooden house. "You're injured?" Dao Lord Hatred swept his gaze and could tell Yen Beichen's condition. "It's just a small injury," Yen Beichen said indifferently. Dao Lord Hatred grinned. "To think that you, Yen Beichen, would end up in such a state as well. There's always someone better. In this generation, there are many paragons and monster incarnates. There are many people who can injure me, so I'm naturally nothing much," Yen Beichen said. "No," Dao Lord Hatred shook his head and pointed at Yen Beichen. "I'm not talking about your injuries, but your heart. Your heart is no longer the heart of the Shura." Yen Beichen was silent. Su Zimo lamented internally. Without fighting or probing, Dao Lord Hatred could tell Yen Beichen's true strength. "Tisk, tsk. Dao Lord Hatred's gaze shifted to Qin Pianran. "What a pity. Everyone says that a woman is a hero's grave. To think that even you, Yen Beichen, can't escape." Dao Lord Hatred closed his eyes and sniffed gently before nodding. "Yes, not bad. You're a cultivator of sword sect." Qin Pianran felt uneasy. For some unknown reason, she felt uneasy in front of Dao Lord Hatred. Suddenly, Dao Lord Hatred opened his eyes and said with a fake smile, "Yen Beichen, how about I kill this woman?" "Hatred, what are you trying to do?" Yen Beichen glared. Dao Lord Hatred laughed and said leisurely, "I'm doing this for your own good. The former Shura can only return if I kill this woman." "Hatred," Yen Beichen hollered softly, "I admit defeat for this battle. You can take my title as Shura and I'll give you the Shura saber as well. I'll have nothing to do with Shura sect, the fiend sects and the cultivation world from now on." "Admit defeat?" Dao Lord Hatred had a regretful expression as he sighed. "It's truly hard to imagine that you, Yen Beichen, would say those words." Thereafter, Dao Lord Hatred laughed and shook his head. "Yen Beichen, you're truly way too naive. How is it possible for you to withdraw from the fight and the cultivation world? Since you've entered the cultivation world, there are many choices that are not up to you." Yen Beichen took a deep breath. "Hatred, what do you want?" "Of course, I want to reclaim my title as Shura," Dao Lord Hatred said. Yen Beichen frowned. "I've already said that I've admitted defeat. From now on, you'll be the Shura." No, Dao Lord Hatred had a mocking expression as he shook his finger. "It's not that simple. I'll take back the title of Shura the same way you snatched it from me back then. Do you think that I'll let you off just because you admit defeat?" Suddenly, Dao Lord Hatred's expression turned menacing and his features were scrunched together as he exuded a torrential hatred. "Back then, I lost everything in the fight for the title of Shura. Glory, status, reputation, all these years, I've been thinking about you, Yen Beichen." Su Zimo respected Yen Beichen's choice and watched coldly from the sidelines without saying anything the entire time. However, he had already realized that today's matter was unlikely to end peacefully. Dao Lord Hatred was completely fiendish and his mind was affected by the Hatred Sutra. It was hard to say if Dao Lord Hatred had cultivated the Hatred Sutra or if the Hatred Sutra had turned him into a fiend. Sensing Dao Lord Hatred's hatred, the fiend's saber in his hands trembled slightly as well, as though it was extremely excited and buzzed endlessly. Chapter 1244. The four people present were all at the Dharma characteristic realm, but the difference in combat strength was way too great. Qin Pianran was definitely a paragon at the Dharma characteristic realm. However, his face was pale and his heart trembled against the hatred released by Dao Lord Hatred. Yen Beichen's essence spirit was injured and he frowned slightly as well, feeling waves of pressure. A look of anger flashed through his eyes. If this was more than 10 years ago, he would not have backed down like this even if his essence spirit was injured. He would have fought Tao Lord Hatred a long time ago. But now, he was worried and truly did not want to fight with Tao Lord Hatred anymore. Of course, apart from that, there was another reason. He did not want Su Zimo to be implicated. On the one hand, Tao Lord Hatred was now the #1 saber of the Fiend sex and possessed the legacy of the Hatred Sutra. It was equivalent to a second Fiend Emperor Hatred and was respected in the Fiend sex with the protection of countless experts. If Su Zimo were to become enemies with him, it would be equivalent to offending the entire Fiend sex. On the other hand, the outcome of the battle between Su Zimo and Tao Lord Hatred was unpredictable. If Su Zimo won, he would become enemies with the Fiend sections. If he lost, his outcome would be even worse. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, it would be extremely disadvantageous for Su Zimo. Hatred, at the end of the day, there's no deep feud between us, Yen Beichen said. If you take away the Shura saber today, the entire cultivation world will understand that you're the true Shura and no one will remember me. Qin Pianran lowered his head in silence. She knew that the reason why Yen Beichen was giving in and enduring was for her and them. Yen Beichen took a deep breath of air and grit his teeth. As though he had made a decision, he said softly, "Hatred, I promise you that I'll leave the cultivation world forever. In the future, there will be no more Yen Beichen in the cultivation world." Beichen? Qin Pianran exclaimed softly, his heart aching. Ever since Yen Beichen started cultivating, he had never been weaker than anyone. He had proven his Tao through killing, and he was invincible. The name of Shura was enough to strike fear into the hearts of the people of the righteous faction. When had he ever said such words? And now, Shura was bowing his head. Tao Lord Hatred laughed and looked at Yen Beichen mockingly, shaking his head. Yen Beichen, you're truly way too naive. In this cultivation world, do you think you can just leave as you please? The great Shura actually wants to lay down the butcher's knife. How ironic. Against Tao Lord Hatred's mockery, Yen Beichen remained silent and endured it. Tao Lord Hatred seemed to have thought of something fun as a mocking look flashed through his eyes. How about this? Kneel in front of me and beg for mercy. Kowtow a few times and I'll let you off. How about that? Yen Beichen was motionless and expressionless. However, veins popped up on his forehead and his blood vessels were exposed. It was clear that his heart was in turmoil. Sensing Yen Beichen's internal struggle, the smile in Tao Lord Hatred's eyes intensified. He enjoyed this feeling, the pleasure of controlling everything and trampling on his former enemy beneath his feet, humiliating and trampling on him wantonly. He did not care whether Yen Beichen chose to fight or not. If Yen Beichen did not fight, he would make Yen Beichen suffer a fate worse than death. If Yen Beichen fought, he would only die. He had no intention of letting Yen Beichen off the moment he arrived here. Right then, a chuckle sounded from the side. There was a hint of mockery and disdain in the chuckle. It was ear-piercing to Tao Lord Hatred. Tao Lord Hatred turned around slowly and looked at Su Zimo. This was the first time he was looking at Su Zimo properly ever since he arrived. "Oh." Tao Lord Hatred revealed a playful expression and asked, "Just now, you're the one laughing?" It had been a long time since someone dared to provoke him like this. "Zimo!" Yen Beichen shouted with a worried expression. Su Zimo waved it off and said unquestionably, "Brother Yen, leave this to me." He could respect Yen Beichen's choice, but he would definitely not watch as Yen Beichen suffered such humiliation. Tao Lord Hatred was enlightened. "I understand now. You're here to help Yen Beichen." Ha! Tao Lord Hatred could not help but laugh. He looked at Su Zimo as though he was looking at an idiot and lamented, "Some people truly don't know what's good for them. How dare you help him just because you know who I am?" "Do you know who I am?" Su Zimo did not answer and asked instead. "Oh, who are you?" Tao Lord Hatred asked casually. Actually, he did not care who Su Zimo was. In his eyes, Su Zimo was already a dead man. "I'm Araki Takashi," Su Zimo said indifferently. "Araki Takashi?" Tao Lord Hatred was slightly stunned. That Tao title sounded familiar. After pondering for a moment, Tao Lord Hatred's pupils constricted slightly and his gaze intensified. Your Tao Lord Araki Takashi, who established the Wu Dao and condensed two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics? Araki Takashi's name was known throughout the world a long time ago. It had only been a few years since the battle at Dragon Tiger Sect, but the news of him condensing two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already spread throughout the Middle Continent. Tao Lord Hatred had already heard of Araki Takashi's name the moment he returned. Good, good, good. Instead of being shocked, Tao Lord Hatred was delighted and nodded repeatedly. Among the current Dharma characteristic paragons, you're the only one worthy of me attacking. Araki Takashi, you came at the right time. You still want to kill me? Suzumo's eyes shone with two divine lights as well that could not be looked at directly. Suzumo stood up slowly and his black hair fluttered without wind. An extremely terrifying aura burst forth from his body, as though a divine being was awakening. A terrifying and majestic aura surged towards Tao Lord Hatred like a tsunami. Suzumo established the Wu Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. Later on, he entered the Dharma characteristic realm and the entire world bowed to him. He had long accumulated an unparalleled aura. If it was any other Dharma Daojun, they would not even have the courage to attack Suzumo. At that moment, Tao Lord Hatred was motionless against that aura. Streams of fiend chi spewed out from his body and all sorts of negative emotions of hatred erupted, fighting against Suzumo's aura. The two monster incarnates of the Dharma characteristic realm had finally clashed. Hurry, retreat. Yen Beichen already knew that this battle was unavoidable and hurriedly retreated from the wooden house with Qin Pianran. The moment the two of them left, the wooden house was reduced to dust by the auras of Suzumo and Tao Lord Hatred. Araki Takashi, today, I'll let you see what a true monster incarnate is. Tao Lord Hatred reared his head and roared into the skies. The fiend saber in his hands buzzed and trembled, emitting pitch-black fiend chi that was cold and dark. This is the Hatred Fiend Saber, the personal weapon of the Fiend Emperor Hatred in the past. However, with the death of the Fiend Emperor Hatred, the power of this fiend saber was greatly reduced. Tao Lord Hatred said, however, I'll allow this fiend saber to regain its former might. Araki Takashi, it's a worthy death for you to die to the Hatred Fiend Saber. Suzumo's heart skipped a beat. It was no wonder why he felt his heart skip a beat when he saw the Fiend Saber. It was the personal Fiend Saber of the Fiend Emperor Hatred in the past. This Fiend Saber was way too terrifying. This was the only weapon that Suzumo had ever felt fear in his entire cultivation journey. Chapter 1245. Suzumo slapped his palm and took out the mystic magnet mountain from his storage bag, smashing it towards Tao Lord Hatred. As Suzumo advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm, his dharmic powers increased exponentially. Right now, the mystic magnet mountain was 1,000 feet tall and descended from the skies like a 100-story building, casting a huge shadow. Suzumo only had a single motive for summoning the mystic magnet mountain right away: to restrain the fiend saber. Mystic Magnet Mountain. Tao Lord Hatred's eyes shone brightly as he recognized the ancient unique treasure right away. That's a good treasure. Unfortunately, you're dreaming if you think that you can restrain my fiend saber with the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Tao Lord Hatred's arm trembled and the fiend saber burst forth with pitch-black fiend chi that surged towards the Mystic Magnet Mountain with a strong hatred. Before the Mystic Magnet Mountain descended, the entire mountain was enveloped by the fiend chi and its light dimmed instantly. Cultivating the Hatred Sutra would allow one to condense a unique hatred fiend chi that contained extremely strong negative emotions. It was ever-changing and could destroy dharmic weapons with ease with a torrential fiend might. Thankfully, the Mystic Magnet Mountain was an ancient unique treasure. If it was any other ordinary dharmic weapon, it would have been crippled by the hatred fiend chi. Tao Lord Hatred strode forward and swung the fiend saber in his hands. Fiend chi burst forth and condensed into a gigantic pitch-black fiend saber in midair that descended from the skies. Before the fiend saber descended, all sorts of negative emotions surged forth and began to affect Suzumo's Tao heart. Suzumo lamented internally. The Hatred Sutra was indeed the #1 fiend sutra of the ancient era. The fiend chi could affect a cultivator's mind. If one's Tao heart was unstable, they would not be able to last long under the envelopment of the hatred fiend chi, let alone fight against Tao Lord Hatred. However, Tao Lord Hatred was facing Su Zimo. Tao Lord Araki Takashi, who had received more than 30 ancient legacies, deduced the Wu Dao, and spent nearly 5,000 years accumulating power. That Tao heart could not be melted by fire, drowned by water, crushed by the heavens and buried by the earth. It was indestructible. Even the ancient fiend emperor of the past might not be able to shake it, let alone Tao Lord Hatred before him. A green light suddenly flew out from between Su Zimo's eyebrows. It spun in the air and emitted rays of green light. The lotus platform of creation. Qinglian, who used to be a 6th-grade creation cultivator, no longer had her roots and leaves. All that was left was this lotus platform. Although it didn't have many mysteries, this lotus platform was still incomparably powerful. Under the control of Su Zimo's essence spirit, the creation lotus platform spun continuously and bloomed slowly. 54 pure white lotus petals bloomed and mist rose into a resplendent light. Clang. The demonic saber landed heavily on the lotus platform of creation. The lotus platform of creation trembled slightly. Su Zimo's gaze sharpened. Although the creation lotus platform managed to block the saber, the creation lotus platform was actually at a disadvantage in this head-on clash. After all, it was not the complete Qinglian of creation. Against this shocking ancient fiend saber, the lotus platform of creation could not defend against it. I can't stall for time with him. Su Zimo made a judgment of the situation instantly. It was difficult for the hatred fiend saber to suppress the lotus platform of creation within a short period of time. However, if it was dragged on and the lotus platform of creation was completely tainted by the hatred fiend chi, it would most likely be immobile like the mystic magnet mountain. A cold glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Streaks of green light shot out from the creation lotus platform, emitting an endless amount of sharpness. Instantly, they formed a green long sword. This was a killing technique that targeted the essence spirit, Qinglian's sword. Slay! Su Zimo pointed forward and hollered softly. Through the endless void, the Qinglian's sword descended instantly and pierced towards Tao Lord Hatred's glabella viciously. It's an essence spirit secret skill. Tao Lord Hatred's expression changed slightly. He sensed a strong sense of danger from the green sword. This was a feeling that he had never experienced ever since he obtained the Hatred Sutra. Even though he was defeated by Yen Beichen back then, he was only defeated by half a move. It was impossible for Yen Beichen to kill him. But now, this green longsword could actually threaten his life. Devouring Fiend Cave. A strong spirit consciousness fluctuation burst forth from Tao Lord Hatred's glabella and a pitch-black fiend cave formed in front of his forehead. The center of the fiend cave collapsed continuously, as though it could drag everything in the world in. The Qinglian sword pierced in and disappeared before long, entering the pitch-black fiend cave. There was a brief pause. Boom! The fiend cave exploded. 54 green lotus seeds fell out, their radiance already dimmed. Tao Lord Hatred released an essence spirit secret skill and defended against the Qinglian sword completely without suffering any impact. The Qinglian sword could even kill conjoint body mighty figures. However, Tao Lord Hatred's combat strength was even more terrifying than most conjoint body mighty figures. The only person who could defend against the Qinglian sword with an essence spirit secret skill was the monster incarnate of the immortal sex, Di-In. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he controlled the creation lotus platform to put away the 54 Qinglian seeds. If the Qinglian seeds were exposed to the hatred fiend chi, they would be crippled over time. They could return to the creation lotus platform to be nourished and wash away the fiend chi on their bodies, allowing them to regain their vitality. I've long heard that Araki Takashi possesses a universal treasure. Now that I've seen it for myself, he truly lives up to his reputation. Tao Lord Hatred grinned and said in disdain, "However, you're way too naive if you think you can injure me with such methods." "Is that so?" Su Zimo was expressionless as he lowered his gaze and said coldly, "Take another move of mine then." Suddenly, a bedazzling golden light shone from his glabella and a terrifying spirit consciousness condensed rapidly, forming a golden swastika symbol. The entire void trembled when the ancient symbol descended. A series of sacred Sanskrit sounds seemed to echo from the firmaments, long and mighty. At that moment, the fiend chi on Tao Lord Hatred's body was significantly suppressed. Rulai Dermic Seal. The Essence Spirit secret skills recorded in the Great Day Rulai Sutra were extremely terrifying and took a huge toll on one's essence spirit and had extremely high requirements. Back then, Su Zimo had once killed the titular disciple of Malevolent Earth sect with this Essence Spirit secret skill. Another Essence Spirit secret skill. Tao Lord Hatred's mouth twitched when he sensed the terror of the symbol. In a fight between cultivators, even if it was a life-and-death battle, they would not release Essence Spirit secret skills right away. After all, a fight between Essence Spirits was extremely dangerous. Most of the time, even if one won, it was easy for one's Essence Spirit to be injured. However, Su Zimo had only exchanged a single round before releasing Essence Spirit's secret skills. Furthermore, he released 2 of them consecutively. He did not even condense a heaven and earth dharma characteristic. He wanted to kill the opponent's essence spirit directly. The 2 of them did not test the waters the moment they exchanged blows. Instead, they released killing moves and revealed their trump cards. When Tao Lord Hatred sensed Su Zimo's killing intent, he was even more enraged and hateful. He channeled the Hatred Sutra completely and the fiend chi in his body almost spewed out, dispersing the descending golden light instantly. Hatred slash. Suddenly, a fiend saber condensed from spirit consciousness flew out from Tao Lord Hatred's glabella. It was extremely similar to the fiend's saber in his hand and slashed towards the incoming swastika symbol. Tao Lord Hatred released a second Essence Spirit secret skill as well. Chapter 1246. The fiend's saber collided with the swastika symbol. There was no earth-shaking sound from the collision of the 2 Essence Spirit secret skills. However, the space at the point of collision distorted. Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran were shuddering with fear. Back then, Yen Beichen's Essence Spirit suffered an irrecoverable injury because of the fight with the Essence Spirits of a few Tao Lords. Now that the 2 Essence Spirit secret skills collided, the energy fluctuations released were even more terrifying than Yen Beichen's battle. Not good. Qin Pianran frowned and whispered, "The golden symbol of the Buddhist monasteries is clearly suppressed by Hatred's fiend saber." In the clash of the 2 Essence Spirit secret skills, Su Zimo's Rulai Dermic Seal was disadvantaged. Zimo has just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. Although his Essence Spirit is comparable to a conjoint body mighty figure, Hatred has already cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm and his Essence Spirit is even superior to Zimo's. Although Yen Beichen's Essence Spirit was injured, his vision was still present and he could see more clearly. It was definitely not a fluke that Tao Lord Hatred was able to suppress all the paragons of the fiend sex and was invincible among his peers upon his return. Yen Beichen continued, "However, don't worry, Zimo has many trump cards as well. He won't be defeated so easily." The moment he said that, the outcome of the Essence Spirit fight was already decided. Fiend Chi surged on the fiend saber and burst forth with a powerful sharpness once more with torrential hatred. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the Rulai Dermic Seal. It was clear that it could not hold on any longer. Ever since Su Zimo cultivated this Essence Spirit secret skill, it had always been successful and could even kill opponents across major cultivation realms. But now, it was destroyed by a cultivator of the same cultivation realm. To be fair, the reputation and terror of the Hatred Sutra was above the Great Day Rulai Sutra to begin with. Coupled with the fact that Tao Lord Hatred's Essence Spirit was stronger, it was only logical for such an outcome to occur. "Araki Takashi, you're courting death by choosing to fight against my Essence Spirit." Tao Lord Hatred roared in laughter. Although the might of his Essence Spirit fiend saber was greatly reduced, it still shot toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression didn't change. His left wrist suddenly lit up with a golden brilliance. Beside him, a light shield covered with golden characters condensed. Mingwang prayer beads. Boom. The demonic saber crashed into the light shield and could no longer hold on, gradually dissipating. An essence soul dermic artifact? Although the Mingwang prayer beads were hidden under Su Zimo's sleeves, Tao Lord Hatred guessed it with a single thought. You have quite a lot of treasures on you. Tao Lord Hatred sneered. Unfortunately, those treasures are about to change owners. Su Zimo's eyes flickered as he hesitated. He had another essence spirit secret skill, the spirit vanquishing whip. However, he could not guarantee that Tao Lord Hatred would be able to release a third essence spirit secret skill to fight against his spirit vanquishing whip. If he were to take another head-on clash, his essence spirit would most likely be severely injured. On the other side, Tao Lord Hatred was wary and did not dare to release his essence spirit secret skill rashly. Boundless Sea of Hatred. Tao Lord Hatred conjured hand seals and released a top-tier dermic art from the Hatred Sutra. The fiend chi on his body rumbled and gathered endlessly, forming a boundless black ocean in midair that surged toward Su Zimo. Although Su Zimo's Tao heart was indestructible, it would be difficult for him to break free if he was engulfed by the ocean of hatred. Rise! Su Zimo conjured hand seals and hollered softly. Suddenly, two godlike behemoths appeared beneath him. One of them was four-legged and carried a heavy shell on its back, moving slowly. The other was slender and scarlet in flames as it reared its head and shrieked. The primordial divine turtle. The primordial soaring serpent. The two godlike behemoths fused together rapidly and the turtle and snake coiled, forming an even more terrifying existence. It had two heads and was unprecedented in history with a gaze that burned like torches that could not be looked at directly. Su Zimo rode on the turtle and snake and his body floated in the sea of hatred. However, he could not sink no matter what. No matter how Tao Lord Hatred channeled it or how great the waves of the sea of hatred were, they were suppressed by the turtle and snake swiftly. The turtle and snake carried Su Zimo upstream and charged towards Tao Lord Hatred rapidly. Suddenly, Su Zimo closed his fingers and conjured a sword art. Instantly, stars filled the firmaments and their trajectories were messed up, as though they were triggered by something. The killing intent of the heavens was to shift the stars. Su Zimo extended his sword fingers and slashed forward. A white sword chi spewed out from his fingertip and slashed towards Tao Lord Hatred with an endless sharpness and shuddering killing intent. The entire void seemed to be split into two by the sword. This was not the end. After slashing once more, Su Zimo burst forth once more and waved his sword fingers consecutively, releasing 10 heaven-slaying sword chi in a single breath. Back in Dragon Tiger Sect, Su Zimo slashed 3 times in a row and killed a mighty figure of Dragon Tiger Sect. Now, the release of 10 heaven-slaying sword chi was enough to slay gods and fiends. Tao Lord Hatred's heart skipped a beat. Although he could not recognize the origin of the heaven-slaying sword chi, he could sense how terrifying the 10 sword chi were. Without time to think, he gripped his saber with both hands and seemed to have fused into one with the fiend's saber, emitting endless hatred. He hated the heavens, the earth, all living beings and everything in the world. Endless hatred. Tao Lord Hatred released the most terrifying saber technique in the Hatred Sutra right away and endless hatred descended. This was the Hatred Saber Intent. The power of intent was comparable to top-tier dermic arts. His saber danced and endless hatred transformed into streams of fiend chi that collided with the 10 incoming sword chi. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing echoed endlessly in an ear-piercing manner. In the blink of an eye, all 10 heaven-slaying sword chi were blocked by Tao Lord Hatred's saber technique. Up till this point of his cultivation, this was the first time Su Zimo had seen a cultivator of the same cultivation realm who could defend against 10 heaven-slaying sword chi unscathed. It was only at this moment that Tao Lord Hatred displayed the number 1 saber technique of the fiend sex. What was even more frightening was that Tao Lord Hatred's saber technique was already fully released and enveloped Su Zimo endlessly, becoming denser and more terrifying. This hatred was endless and boundless. The dominance of the saber technique absorbed all the spirit chi and dermic powers in the surrounding void and turned them into the hatred fiend chi in his body, fusing into the saber technique. If one was implicated by the saber technique, they would never be able to break free. Beneath the endless hatred was a bottomless abyss. Su Zimo soared into the air and took a deep breath, chanting Sanskrit. Buzz. Put. At the same time, Su Zimo conjured Buddhist dermic seals, and 4 dermic seals descended without reservation. Su Zimo had not stopped yet. The endless hatred was terrifying, and it was difficult to stop it with the 4 dermic seals of the Buddhist monasteries. Su Zimo needed to release even more power. See Burial Secret Skill. Apocalyptic Heavenly Fiend Fist. Great Mighty Heavenly Dragon Expiation Art. Sandstorm. Great Brahma Light Fist. Avicii Hell. In the blink of an eye, more than 30 terrifying dermic arts and secret skills were released by Su Zimo and arrived. All dermic arts were one and the world trembled. Chapter 1247. More than 30 dermic arts descended and the entire bamboo forest was destroyed instantly. All the bamboo was reduced to dust by so many terrifying dermic arts. How terrifying! Chin Pian Ran, who was watching from the side, could not help but exclaim. She was born in a super sect like Sword Sect and had seen all sorts of paragons and monster incarnates. The previous top of the Dharma characteristic ranking, Tao Lord Immortal Sword, was her senior brother. However, even Tao Lord Immortal Sword could not release such a ferocious and terrifying attack. Those were more than 30 top-grade dermic arts. Human strength was not endless. It was already rare for most cultivators to be able to comprehend 1 or 2 top-grade cultivation techniques. Comprehending 3 or 4 was already the limit. For Su Zimo to release more than 30 dermic arts in an instant was definitely unprecedented and way too shocking. Yen Beichen could not help but nod as well. To think that Zimo would be able to transform to this realm in more than 10 years. More than 10 years ago in 100 Refinement Sect, Su Zimo was only at the Void Reversion realm. Tao Lord Hatred felt the pressure as well and suddenly howled into the skies. His howl was mournful and sorrowful, causing one's heart to surge and unable to control themselves. A sound domain attack. Given Su Zimo's Qinglian true body, there were very few sound domain attacks that could shake his mind. However, the moment the howl sounded, he frowned. Not only did the sound domain attack stimulate his eardrums, it also affected his mind and even his essence spirit. What a terrifying hatred sutra! Kill! Su Zimo did not dare to be careless and released Thunderclap Kill to defend against it as well. Rumble! Even so, it could not suppress Tao Lord Hatred. After that mournful howl, endless hatred surged from Tao Lord Hatred's body and was pushed to its limits. The entire process was like a person who had experienced a huge change, going from grief, despair to hatred. Endless hatred burst forth and circled around the fiend's saber, forming a gigantic pitch-black saber beam that slashed down at the more than 30 dermic arts. Boom! More than 30 top-grade dermic arts collided with the pitch-black saber beam and let out a deafening bang, causing the entire world to tremble. At the point of collision, balls of dazzling light burst forth. A gigantic energy fluctuation formed a semicircular barrier that extended in all directions. Countless towering ancient trees in the forest were sliced at the waist. The soil was overturned, and sand and stones were sent flying. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. The countless fiendish demons in this forest were so frightened that they fled, leaving this place. Tao Lord Hatred, he did not take a single step back. Su Zimo's, Su Zimo, Su and Su. The Hatred Sutra was too powerful. Su Zimo, Su Zimo, Su Zimo, Su Dao, Su Dao Am. After all, those ancient mighty figures were half-martial ancestors who could not even break through to the Mahayana realm. Of course, the Tao Lord Hatred before him was not the true fiend Emperor Hatred. Although more than 30 dermic arts were released at the same time and could not suppress Tao Lord Hatred, It was impossible for Tao Lord Hatred to gain the upper hand. The two of them were in a stalemate and channeled their dharmic powers continuously. Neither of them was willing to back down. The auras between the two of them were rising rapidly. Finally, the dharmic powers in both of their bodies reached a critical point. Against the pressure of that power, both of them could not withstand it. Bang! Bang! Almost at the same time, a gigantic phantom burst forth from their bodies and rose rapidly, standing tall with a terrifying aura. Both of them used their heaven and earth dharma characteristics at the same time. 10 feet, 30 feet, 80 feet, 85 feet. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo's Rulai dharmic body had already risen to a height of 85 feet. As for Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth dharma characteristic, it did not stop at 85 feet and rose to 90 feet before long. 90 feet supreme dharma characteristic. Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran were shocked. Nobody had seen Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth dharma characteristic before, and nobody knew how tall it was. But now, that heaven and earth dharma characteristic had finally descended. Throughout history, there were many paragons and monster incarnates who could condense a supreme dharma characteristic that was 88 feet or 89 feet tall. However, there were very few who could condense a supreme dharma characteristic. For 10,000 years, extreme fire was the only one. Now, there was another Tao Lord Hatred. Even the 90-foot dharma idols had different battle prowess. At the very least, Yen Beichen could sense that Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth dharma characteristic was even stronger than Extreme Fire's Scarlet Flame's dharmic body. Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth dharma characteristic was extremely strange. It was dressed in black robes but had a head of white hair. Furthermore, its back was facing Su Zimo and it wielded a pitch-black saber. Its back view was lonely and the entire dharma characteristic exuded a sorrowful aura. However, just the silhouette of his back was enough to make the Buddha's dharma body tremble. An 85 feet heaven and earth dharma characteristic was already strong enough to sweep through those of the same cultivation realm. However, the difference was way too great against a 90 feet supreme dharma characteristic. Back in the Battle of 100 Refinement Sect, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's 89 feet heaven and earth dharma characteristic was defeated by Extreme Fire's Scarlet Flame's dharmic body. However, Su Zimo's heaven and earth dharma characteristic was only 85 feet tall. Qin Pianran looked worried. She could clearly sense that Yen Beichen's grip on her hand had tightened and his palm was covered in cold sweat. Pianran, the situation isn't looking good. Suddenly, Yen Beichen said, "Leave first. I've got to help Zimo later." "Beichen, your essence spirit is injured and you can't attack," Qin Pianran said hurriedly. "Furthermore, I heard that fellow Taoist Su has cultivated 2 heaven and earth dharma characteristics. There might be a chance for things to turn around." 2 heaven and earth dharma characteristics won't do either. The difference between an 85 feet heaven and earth dharma characteristic and a supreme dharma characteristic is way too great. Yen Beichen shook his head with a grim expression. Boom! Another loud bang sounded from Su Zimo's body. Another phantom soared into the skies. The second heaven and earth dharma characteristic, the 85 feet heavenly fiend dharma body. Against the pressure of a supreme dharma characteristic, a single Rulai dharmic body could not withstand it and was defeated without even having to attack. The Rulai dharmic body and heavenly fiend dharma body stood side by side behind Su Zimo, emitting a powerful aura and confronting Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth dharma characteristic. "Fufu, you finally released your second dharma characteristic," Tao Lord Hatred laughed. "I've long heard that Araki Takashi entered the dharma characteristic realm and condensed 2 heaven and earth dharma characteristics. That's unprecedented and the entire cultivation world praised you to the skies. Today, I'll let you know one thing. In the face of a supreme dharma characteristic, your 285 feet tall heaven and earth dharma characteristics are nothing." Tao Lord Hatred's heart skipped a beat. The heaven and earth dharma characteristic that was initially standing behind him suddenly turned around. Su Zimo exchanged glances with the heaven and earth dharma characteristic and could not help but shudder. His Tao heart nearly collapsed. Chapter 1248. Those blood-red eyes were filled with sorrow, pain, despair, hatred, nirvana, and other negative emotions. Those blood-colored eyes seemed like a bottomless abyss. Su Zimo merely exchanged a single glance and was nearly devoured by the abyss. A heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was the culmination of all Dharmic arts and was the pinnacle of Dharmic arts. It was lifeless and could not have any emotions. However, Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was different. Just by standing there, the Dharma characteristic was like an abyss with endless hatred that could devour and destroy everything. Looking into those eyes, Su Zimo suddenly recalled the legend of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. Legend has it that the Fiend Emperor Hatred ultimately committed suicide out of hatred for himself. Su Zimo could not imagine what sort of hatred would cause him to kill himself. However, when he saw those eyes, Su Zimo suddenly understood. There was no hope in those eyes. For the Fiend Emperor Hatred, living was a form of torture. Boom. As Su Zimo pondered, Tao Lord Hatred willed and the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic behind him walked over. With a single step, it crossed endless space and arrived before Su Zimo instantly. The gigantic body that was 100 feet tall emitted a torrential hatred. It was much taller than the Rulai Dharmic body and heavenly fiend Dharma body and suppressed Su Zimo's two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics completely in terms of aura. Sush. The hatred Dharmic body swung the saber in its hands and slashed down viciously at Su Zimo's head. The heavenly fiend Dharmic body swung the scythe in its hands as well and blocked the fiend's saber. Clang. The two sabers collided and sparks flew. The hatred Dharmic body was motionless and there was no fluctuation in its eyes. However, the heavenly fiend Dharmic body shuddered and its Dharmic powers wavered. The entire Dharma characteristic was almost sliced apart by the hatred Dharmic body. A 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could even fight against some conjoint body mighty figures. With that heavenly fiend Dharmic body, Su Zimo was invincible in Dragon Tiger sect and no one could defend against his attacks. Even mighty figures had to bow down to him. However, in front of this hatred Dharma body, the difference between the two was too great. Although there was only a difference of 5 feet between 85 feet and 95 feet, the distance between them was only 5 feet. This height of 5 feet was like the difference between cloud and mud. If it was the 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic of other cultivators, they would not even be able to withstand a single slash from the hatred Dharmic body. The reason why the heavenly fiend Dharma body could withstand it was because the foundation of this Dharma body originated from the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. However, the Dharma body was fused with many mysterious fiend cultivation techniques. This heavenly fiend Dharma body was a culmination of the fiend Tao. Boom. The Tathagata Dharma body moved as well. It stretched out a palm that shone with golden light and covered the sky, pressing down on the hatred Dharma body. The Lihen Dharmakaya did not even look at it. With a backhand punch, it struck the Tathagata Dharmakaya's palm. Bang! Fist and palm collided. The Buddha's Dharma body shuddered and took half a step back. Haha! Tao Lord Hatred laughed with a smug expression. Araki Takashi, if you continue cultivating and cultivate these two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics to a height of 89 feet or 90 feet, you might be able to fight me. Unfortunately, you no longer have the chance. Today I'll take your life. As Tao Lord Hatred hollered, the hatred on the hatred Dharmic body intensified and it let out a tragic roar as it fell into endless pain and hatred. The fiend saber in its hand rose and descended once more. So, the saber tore through the air and even let out a series of sobbing sounds that were shuddering. That slash enveloped the two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, the Tathagata Dharma body and heavenly fiend Dharma body. Su Zimo had a grim expression. One would only be able to sense the terror of a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic if they were truly fighting against it. 9 was the extreme number. 90 feet was the supreme Dharma body. That was definitely not a lie. Boom! Under that immense pressure, Su Zimo no longer held back. With a loud bang, another phantom soared into the skies. A third heaven and earth Dharma characteristic descended. The heaven and earth Dharma characteristic stood on dark clouds and shone with endless lightning. It was dignified and domineering as it looked down on the world. It wielded a whip formed from 1,000,000 thunderbolts and had a torrential aura. The heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was like an ancient god of thunder that controlled the world. The thunder Dharma body descended. The thunder Dharma body was formed with the great void spirit refinement section as its foundation and the profundities of many immortal Tao cultivation techniques. It rose rapidly to a height of 85 feet. There were a total of 385 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. A deep look of fear flashed through Tao Lord Hatred's eyes. Thankfully, Tao Lord Araki Takashi was only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. If he were to cultivate to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, even his supreme Dharma characteristic would not be able to shake the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. But now, the 385 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were still unable to threaten his hatred Dharma body. Crackle! The whip in the form of thunder danced and tore through the air, coiling around the wrist of the hatred Dharma body instantly. A massive power of thunder surged into the body of the hatred Dharma body through the whip. The power of thunder was the most effective against evil. Instantly, the fiend chi on the body of the hatred Dharma body was even suppressed. However, immediately after, the eyes of the hatred Dharma body shone with a scarlet color and hatred surged in its heart. Fiend chi spewed out and it broke free from the restraints of the thunder whip. Bang! 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 The hatred Dharma body slashed thrice in succession. The thunder Dharma body, Rulai Dharmic body and heavenly fiend Dharma body withstood it head-on. However, their bodies shuddered and they retreated a few steps. They could not defend against it. Su Zimo's expression finally changed. Even the 385 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics could not defend against the power of a supreme Dharma characteristic. He did not expect to encounter such a terrifying enemy on his trip to the central continent. Bang! 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 The hatred Dharma body attacked repeatedly. Wherever its saber passed, hatred surged and fiend chi surged, suppressing everything. Su Zimo's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics retreated continuously. Araki Takashi, you've lost. Tao Lord Hatred had a menacing expression and could not help but laugh. What monster incarnate of history? You're still going to be killed by me here. Zimo, hurry and leave. Right then, Yen Beichen's voice sounded in Su Zimo's consciousness. Given your capabilities, you'll definitely be able to escape. Leave this place. Once you cultivate to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, you'll definitely be able to make a comeback and suppress hatred. Su Zimo remained silent. He had many trump cards. Even though Tao Lord Hatred had the upper hand in this battle, Tao Lord Hatred would not be able to kill him if he wanted to escape. However, if he escaped, Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran would definitely die here. How could Su Zimo let Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran die while he escaped alone? As though he could guess what Su Zimo was thinking, Yen Beichen sent another voice transmission. 2 people dying is better than the 3 of us dying here. If you escape, you'll be able to take revenge for us in the future. Su Zimo still did not reply. No matter what, he could not leave Yen Beichen here and leave alone. Furthermore, he was Araki Takashi, the invincible Tao Lord Araki Takashi who looked down on the past and present. Although this was only the Qinglian's true body and could not represent his full combat strength, this Qinglian's true body had undergone close to 5,000 years of cultivation and had undergone a transformation. He would definitely not admit defeat so easily. There had to be other solutions. Chapter 1249. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and looked at Tao Lord Hatred who was not far away, trying his best to find a way to break out of the situation. At that moment, the hatred Dharmic body had the upper hand and his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were completely suppressed. Tao Lord Hatred's expression was extremely smug. However, the hatred Dharmic body emitted torrential hatred. The emotions of Tao Lord Hatred and the hatred Dharmic body did not fit in. A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. That was Tao Lord Hatred's weakness. Su Zimo was still controlling his 3 heaven and earth dharma characteristics with all his might to circle around the hatred dharmic body. At the same time, he suddenly chanted Sanskrit and chanted an obscure sutra. There seemed to be a mysterious power contained within the Sanskrit. However, Yen Baichen, Qin Pianran and Dao Lord Hatred were not affected at all when they heard the Sanskrit. What are you shouting for? Dao Lord Hatred sneered and was about to mock Su Zimo when his expression changed. Something was wrong. The connection between him and the hatred dharmic body seemed to have been affected. Against the Sanskrit, they could not sense anything. However, the hatred dharmic body's movements slowed down and the fiend chi on its body was erratic. Before long, the sutra was chanted. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he lowered his gaze like a gigantic Buddha with a dignified expression. He conjured hand seals and chanted another sutra. This sutra was completely different from the one just now. However, it had an extremely obvious impact on the hatred dharmic body. The blood light that was about to burst out of the eyes of the hatred dharmic body dimmed significantly and showed signs of dissipating. A hint of confusion appeared on the face of the hatred dharmic body as well. Yen Baichen was delighted and whispered, "Zimo has found a way to restrain the hatred dharmic body." Qin Pianran was also surprised and happy. He said, "It's really hard to imagine that the supreme dharma form, which is invincible, would be affected by such a small spell. I'm afraid these incantations are not simple. Every single word exudes an ancient aura. I've never seen it on a Buddhist cultivator before. I'm afraid it has been lost for many years." Yen Baichen said in a deep voice. Yen Baichen was right. These incantations were the supreme secret incantations of ancient Buddhism. Great Light Mantra. Hearing Release Mantra. The Great Secret Incantation. 6 Vajra Incantation. During the ancient war, countless lives were lost in the Tianhuang mainland. The disciples of the Buddhist sects chanted these 4 secret incantations to release the souls of the dead and rid them of their resentment. The target of these 4 secret incantations was not anyone else, but the Dharmakaya of hatred. The heaven and earth dharma characteristic contained endless hatred. If he could purge it, there was nothing to fear except for Dao Lord Hatred. By the time Su Zimo chanted the 2nd secret incantation, the hatred dharmakaya's movements had already turned sluggish. The thunder dharmic body, Rulai dharmic body and heavenly fiend dharmic body finally made it through and fought against the hatred dharmakaya. Both sides were in a stalemate. By the time Su Zimo chanted the 3rd secret incantation, the hatred dharmakaya was even more affected and was already at a disadvantage. In the ancient era, no Buddhist cultivator would dare to face the fiend emperor hatred head-on wherever he passed. Even the Buddha emperor with the green lotus of creation couldn't do anything about it. He could only sigh. Dao Lord Hatred said sternly, "Araki Takashi, you're dreaming if you think you can suppress the hatred dharmakaya with your messy incantations." Those were definitely not empty words. Back in the ancient era, if the fiend emperor hatred had not committed suicide, none of the emperors would have been able to kill him even if they were resplendent. The fiend chi on the hatred dharmakaya's body showed signs of resurgence and the blood glint in its eyes intensified. However, Su Zimo was unmoved. He looked at Dao Lord Hatred and shook his head. "Unfortunately, you're not the fiend emperor hatred of the past. Although you've also cultivated the hatred sutra, you're far inferior compared to the fiend emperor hatred. You haven't experienced the huge change that happened to the fiend emperor hatred back then. You'll never be able to feel the despair that he felt back then, and you'll never be able to comprehend the true profoundness of the hatred sutra." Dao Lord Hatred shuddered. Those words were way too powerful and targeted Dao Lord Hatred's weakness directly. That was indeed an indisputable truth. Su Zimo could not sense the sadness, despair, hatred and nirvana in the bloodshot eyes of the hatred dharmakaya from Dao Lord Hatred. Dao Lord Hatred still had emotions and desires at the end of the day. That was his weakness. Furthermore, there was no way to make up for that weakness. If Dao Lord Hatred truly comprehended the essence of the Hatred Sutra, his outcome would be the same as the fiend Emperor Hatred, and he would commit suicide. That was a dead end. At that moment, Tao Lord Hatred's face turned pale and his Tao heart wavered for a moment. The hatred Dharmakaya was implicated and was affected by it as well, causing most of its fiend chi to dissipate. There was no way Su Zimo would miss out on such an opportunity. The fourth secret incantation descended. The blood glint in the eyes of the hatred Dharmakaya vanished completely. The hatred on his body had calmed down as well. Without the support of hatred, it was equivalent to losing its source of power. The hatred Dharmakaya was forced to retreat against the encirclement of Su Zimo's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. In the blink of an eye, it was riddled with holes. Su Zimo's 4 secret incantations of the Buddhist monasteries were meant to release the hatred Dharmakaya from purgatory. In reality, the reason why the fiend Emperor Hatred committed suicide back then was also to obtain a form of release. It was as though it was fate. The whip of the thunder Dharmakaya body, the hand seals of the Rulai Dharmic body and the scythe of the heavenly fiend Dharma body descended on the hatred Dharmakaya body at the same time. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The 90 tall 9 heavens supreme Dharma idol collapsed. As though he was struck by lightning, Tao Lord Hatred shuddered and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth with an indignant expression. He had not expected that he would lose to his Tao heart. Su Zimo secretly thanked his lucky stars. If he was truly against the fiend Emperor Hatred, his 4 secret incantations would not be able to suppress the hatred in the fiend Emperor Hatred's heart. However, Tao Lord Hatred was not the fiend Emperor Hatred at the end of the day. Su Zimo conjured hand seals and changed them repeatedly. Suddenly, 3 balls of flames of different colors appeared beside him. Crimson, golden, and black flames quickly gathered together. A red light burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella and the final essence spirit fire entered, forming the Kacharati Tao fire that shot towards Tao Lord Hatred. Swoosh! The Kacharati Tao fire descended on Tao Lord Hatred. A torrential fiend chi surged from Tao Lord Hatred's body and his blood chi surged, fighting against the Kacharati Tao fire with a series of crackling sounds. Even against the burning of the Kacharati Tao fire, his bones and organs were not injured and his skin and hair were only burned to ashes. Even if he did not manage to comprehend the Hatred Sutra completely, Tao Lord Hatred was way too strong. Although Tao Lord Hatred had already turned into a flaming man against the Kacharati Tao fire, he still let out a furious roar and swung his fiend saber, charging towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved. The creation lotus platform descended and smashed towards Tao Lord Hatred. Boom! Sparks flew when the creation lotus platform collided with the fiend's saber. The creation lotus platform was sent flying, but it could not stop Tao Lord Hatred in his tracks. Right then, the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics arrived together and released a powerful attack. Chapter 1250. The whip of the thunder Dharmic body struck Tao Lord Hatred heavily, lacerating his flesh and revealing his bones. Instantly, the Kacharati Tao fire surrounded the wound and it dried up before a single drop of blood flowed out. Bang! The Rulai Dharmic body's hand seal landed on Tao Lord Hatred's chest. The jarring sound of bones cracking could be heard. Tao Lord Hatred's chest caved in instantly. A huge pit was created by the hand seal. Many broken bones had even pierced through his lungs. The scythe of the heavenly fiend Dharmic body descended. Although Tao Lord Hatred avoided his vitals, his abdomen was still pierced by the scythe. The scythe was pulled to the side viciously, almost slicing Tao Lord Hatred's body into 2. Those 3 heavy injuries might not be fatal for Tao Lord Hatred. However, Tao Lord Hatred's body was still burning with the Kacharati Tao fire. Initially, his body and blood chi were in a stalemate against the Kacharati Tao fire. Now that he was severely injured, the balance was broken instantly. The Kacharati Tao fire surged into his body before long, burning his bones and organs, evaporating his blood chi and destroying his life force. Even conjoint body mighty figures would not be able to survive if the Kacharati Tao fire burned his bones and organs. At that moment, Su Zimo's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were already riddled with wounds and could no longer hold on, dissipating rapidly. The intensity of this battle far exceeded Su Zimo's imagination. If not for the fact that he had accumulated for close to 5,000 years in the Dao inheritance ground, he would definitely not have won this battle. Many signs indicated that Tianhuang mainland had already ushered in a golden era where paragons were rampant and monster incarnates rose. Existences like Di-In and Dao Lord Hatred would appear one after another in the future. This was a great era that was not weaker than the ancient era. Of course, with so many paragons and monster incarnates, it also meant that Tianhuang mainland was about to welcome a huge change. If one's combat strength was insufficient, they would only be reduced to ants and crushed to death against this huge change. Thump. Finally, Dao Lord Hatred could not hold on any longer and knelt on the ground with one hand supporting his fiend saber, glaring fiercely at Su Zimo through the layers of flames. Dao Lord Hatred's life force was way too exuberant. Even after suffering such heavy injuries and the Kacharati Dao fire had already burned his internal organs to ashes, he still did not perish and persisted until now. Given Dao Lord Hatred's combat strength, Su Zimo would not be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. Unfortunately, a crack had appeared in his Dao heart, so even if he escaped with his life, it would be difficult for his cultivation to improve in the future. To him, this blow was worse than death. Dao Lord Hatred's blood qi dried up and his life force drained rapidly. In the end, his gaze moved away from Su Zimo and landed on Yan Beichen's face. He suddenly smiled. Under the burning of the Kacharati Dao fire, Dao Lord Hatred was completely unrecognizable. This smile appeared extremely malevolent in the blazing flames. Yan Beichen, do you really think that you can extricate yourself from the cultivation world and wash your hands clean? Dao Lord Hatred's voice sounded, "You're the Shura. How much blood was on your hands in the past? It's impossible for you to live a peaceful life. If I can find you today, someone else will find this place tomorrow. You'll never be able to leave the cultivation world and you'll never be able to live in peace. You want to turn back after stepping onto the path of the Shura? To think that the mighty Shura would fall to such a state for the sake of a woman from an immortal sect. What a joke! What a joke! Ha! Dao Lord Hatred let out a chilling laughter that sent chills down one's spine. Shura, you'll be killed by that woman sooner or later. I'm merely leaving first and you'll come down to accompany me very soon. I didn't lose. Dao Lord Hatred's obsession was still with Yan Beichen. Even before his death, he was still thinking about his past failures and how he wanted to compete with Yan Beichen. However, in the end he died. The ball of flames burned brighter and brighter, enveloping his body completely and burning continuously. After half an incense stick's time, the Kacharati Dao fire was gradually extinguished. Dao Lord Hatred was already burned to ashes, leaving only a pitch-black fiend saber stabbed into the ground and a storage bag beside it. Qin Pianran stared blankly at the place where Dao Lord Hatred died. It was unknown what she was thinking and she was in a daze. Yan Beichen sensed Qin Pianran's abnormality and understood immediately. Qin Pianran was a woman after all and Dao Lord Hatred's words before his death still triggered her. Yan Beichen reached out and gripped Qin Pianran's soft hands tightly, consoling. Pianran, Hatred knows that he's going to die and is just spouting nonsense. Don't take it to heart. The world is huge. I don't believe that there's no place for the two of us. As time passes, who will remember us? Yan Beichen's words did not dispel Qin Pianran's worries. She was a little lost. But, I'm the one who harmed you. You ended up in this state because you wanted to save me. But, she was filled with guilt, self-blame and many other worries. Yan Beichen smiled. Pianran, don't let your imagination run wild. My essence spirit is injured and my life isn't in danger. Furthermore, you weren't the one who injured my essence spirit. How can I blame you? Pausing for a moment, Yan Beichen asked teasingly, Pianran, are you trying to leave me because my essence spirit is injured? No way, Qin Pianran blushed and her expression softened. Even if you want to leave, I won't let go. Yan Beichen gripped Qin Pianran's palm tightly and said softly with an unusually firm tone. On the other side, Su Zimo walked forward and arrived beside the fiend's saber, staring at it for a long time. The fiend's saber was completely silent without any luster. It looked like a pitch-black scrap saber that was far from its previous torrential fiend might. If it was anyone else, they would not have imagined that this pitch-black scrap saber would release a terrifying power as just now. Su Zimo did not touch the fiend's saber. Instead, he shifted his gaze to the storage bag at the side. As the number 1 saber of the fiend's sex, Tao Lord Hatred must have many treasures in his storage bag. Among them, the most valuable was undoubtedly the Hatred Sutra. Su Zimo walked forward and opened the storage bag, scanning it carefully with his spirit consciousness. A look of disappointment flashed through his eyes. There were indeed many treasures in the storage bag. Elixirs, dermic weapons, secret skills and universal treasures, there was everything. Unfortunately, he did not discover the Hatred Sutra. Su Zimo did not use his soul-searching technique. Firstly, just now that the battle was intense and he was almost suppressed by Tao Lord Hatred's supreme Dharma characteristic, there was no chance for him to use his soul-searching technique. Secondly, there was a chance of success for soul-searching techniques that targeted those with cultivation and combat strength lower than Su Zimo's. If he were to search Tao Lord Hatred's soul, Su Zimo might even suffer a backlash and injure his essence spirit. Chapter 1251. Su Zimo put away the storage bag and his gaze shifted to the Hatred Fiend's saber not far away. From the moment he caught sight of the fiend's saber, he could sense how terrifying it was. Even his creation Lotus platform could barely contend against the saber. If he fought for a longer period of time, he would inevitably be suppressed by the fiend's saber like the mystic magnet mountain. Su Zimo reached out and gripped the hilt of the Hatred Fiend's saber, wanting to pull it out and observe it carefully. However, the moment his palm touched the hilt of the fiend's saber, he felt a vast amount of negative emotions surge into his consciousness through his fingertips and affect his essence spirit. At the same time, he felt an intense pain in his palm. Su Zimo retracted his palm instinctively and looked down. His pupils constricted and he frowned. His palm was actually bleeding. Although the blood qi of Qinglian's true body was not strong, its skin was indestructible and could fight against Khanate Tao Lord dermic weapons. However, just now, he had only touched the hilt of the Hatred Fiend's saber and his palm had been injured by the power of the Hatred Fiend's saber. If the blade of the fiend's saber was used on him, it would probably slice Qinglian's true body into two. The weapon of the ancient fiend emperor was indeed extraordinary. The Hatred Fiend's saber was an emperor weapon to begin with. However, up till now, no one could truly use the power of the fiend's saber. Interesting, Su Zimo murmured softly. The Hatred Fiend's saber was so repulsive towards him. He did not know if it was because he had the legacies of the immortal and Buddhist Taoists or for some other reason. Although he did not find the Hatred Sutra, the Hatred Fiend's saber was also an utmost treasure. Although he could not control the Hatred Fiend's saber yet, he might be able to become the owner of the fiend's saber in the future as his cultivation improved. At that thought, Su Zimo circulated his dermic powers and placed the Hatred Fiend's saber into his storage bag, prepared to try again after advancing to the conjoint body realm. Thereafter, he walked towards Yen Beichen and Su Zimo. After taking a few steps, Su Zimo's expression changed. His palm swiftly slapped his storage bag and pulled out the Hatred Fiend's saber instantly. He threw it on the ground with a bewildered expression on his face. At that moment, the Hatred Fiend's saber was surrounded by wisps of black demonic qi, as though it could devour all living beings in the world. As Su Zimo threw out the Hatred Fiend's saber, the fiend qi on the fiend's saber gradually calmed down and became dim again. What happened? Yen Beichen noticed Su Zimo's actions and asked with a frown. This saber is too terrifying. Su Zimo recalled the scene just now and said seriously, this demonic saber in my storage bag is actually emitting a powerful demonic aura that corrodes all the treasures around it. As he spoke, Su Zimo took out a few Tao Lord dermic weapons from his storage bag. Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran could not help but gasp when they saw it. These Tao Lord dermic artifacts were all at the perfect grade. However, in just a few breaths, those perfect grade Tao Lord dermic weapons were tainted by the fiend qi and dimmed. They were completely crippled. What a domineering fiend saber! He could not even place it in his storage bag. unless Su Zimo was prepared to give up all the treasures in his storage bag. This was the first time he had encountered such a troublesome weapon up till this point of his cultivation. In fact, he did not even dare to refine the hatred fiend saber for fear that his essence spirit would be devoured by it. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly said, "Brother Yen, give it a try. You don't have the aura of the immortal and Buddhist cultivation techniques and cultivate the Shura Dao of the fiend sections. Perhaps you won't be rejected by the hatred fiend saber." When Yen Beichen heard that, he came to the side of the hatred fiend saber curiously and tried to grab the hilt. The fiend saber did not react. Su Zimo nodded. True enough. Although he cultivated the dermic formulations of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Daos and was strong enough to suppress those of the same cultivation realm, his aura was impure and was rejected by the hatred fiend saber. However, Yen Beichen did not have such a rejection. Su Zimo smiled. "Brother Yen, it seems like I'm not fated with the hatred fiend saber. You should keep it." If this was in the past, Yen Beichen would definitely be delighted to obtain such a powerful fiend weapon. However, at that moment, he shook his head. "My essence spirit is injured. Even if the hatred fiend saber doesn't reject me, I won't be able to refine it." Su Zimo said hurriedly, "Don't worry, Brother Yen. I'll definitely think of a way to treat the injuries on your essence spirit. Once your essence spirit recovers, you'll naturally be able to refine the hatred fiend saber." Yen Beichen smiled. "I've already decided to leave the cultivation world and no longer participate in any disputes. I'm even prepared to give up the Shura saber that has accompanied me for many years. There's no point in having this hatred fiend saber." The fact that Yen Beichen said that meant that he had made up his mind and would not change it. After pausing for a moment, Yen Beichen continued, "Furthermore, this hatred fiend saber is more or less inauspicious. Both of its owners did not have good endings and did not have good endings. That's right. This saber is truly troublesome. I can't take it or touch it." Su Zimo lamented. Yen Beichen pondered for a moment and said, "This hatred fiend saber is inauspicious. If you don't want it, bury it on the spot." All right, Su Zimo did not hesitate either. Although the hatred fiend saber was strong, it would only bring him endless trouble if he carried it with him. Su Zimo waved his sleeves and created an extremely deep pit on the ground with immense dermic powers. One could not see the bottom at a glance. The pit was at least a few thousand feet deep, like an endless abyss. Su Zimo tossed the hatred fiend saber in right away. The hatred fiend saber turned into a black shadow and entered the abyss. As Su Zimo covered the ground with soil, he buried the hatred fiend saber completely. "Brother Yen, what are your plans from now on?" Su Zimo asked. Yen Beichen pondered for a moment and said, "Zimo, I have to ask you for a favor." "Brother, feel free to speak your mind. There's no need to stand on ceremony." Su Zimo waved it off. Yen Beichen said, "Hatred is already dead. I'm sure it won't be long before the fiend sects find out. There's no way we can hide this matter." There were many omnipotent mighty figures in the fiend sections. Furthermore, if Tao Lord Hatred had a destiny symbol in the fiend sects, the fiend sects would know right away if his destiny symbol shattered after his death. Yen Beichen continued, "After you leave this place, you can spread the news that I fought with hatred and both of us died in battle. That way, I can make use of this battle to fake my death and leave the cultivation world completely. From now on, there will no longer be a person like Yen Beichen in the cultivation world." Qin Pianran and Yen Beichen held hands in silence at the side. No matter what decision Yen Beichen made, she would support him. Su Zimo sighed internally. He knew very well that Yen Beichen's plan was not only for him to fake his death to escape, Yen Beichen was doing it for him as well. Tao Lord Hatred was equivalent to a second Fiend Emperor Hatred. What sort of status did he have in the Fiend sects? If the Fiend sects knew that Tao Lord Hatred died in his hands, he would definitely suffer the wrath and revenge of the entire Fiend sects. On the surface, Yen Beichen's action was to fake his death. However, in reality, it was also to help Su Zimo bear everything. Chapter 1252. Brother Yen, I know what you're thinking. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before saying, however, this matter is still a little hasty. There are many loopholes in your explanation that you fought with Li Hen and ended up dying in battle. I'm afraid many people will be suspicious. They're only suspicious. Yen Beichen said, I don't have a life token in the sect. As long as I hide and am not discovered, no one will remember me after a long time. After pausing for a moment, Yen Beichen pulled out the Shura saber beside him and handed it to Su Zimo. This Shura saber is the dermic weapon of Shura sect. Think of a way to return it to Shura sect. Yen Beichen was even willing to give up on the Shura saber that had followed him for many years. It was clear that he was determined to leave the cultivation world. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo replied, that's easy. We'll auction the Azura saber at an auction house and spread the news. That way, cultivators of Azura sect will naturally redeem the saber. Alright, let's do that. Yen Beichen said, it's not convenient for me to show my face. I'll leave this to you. Su Zimo did not decline and merely asked, Brother Yen, are you really willing to part with it? Yen Beichen's gaze lingered on the Shura saber for a long time. Gradually, he hid the reluctance in his eyes and shook his head resolutely. There's nothing to be reluctant about. I'm no longer Shura sect and am not worthy of this saber. It's good for it to return. When Su Zimo saw that Yen Beichen had made up his mind, he did not try to persuade him anymore and cupped his fists. I'll go settle this matter now and return in a few days. Su Zimo bade farewell to Yen Beichen and turned to leave. After leaving the deep mountains, Su Zimo sped the entire way. About 4 hours later, he caught sight of a cultivation city. It was extremely lively inside with countless cultivators riding on their swords. Jinying Zhenjuan and void reversions could be seen everywhere. A city of this level was already considered quite prosperous. There must be some large-scale auction houses and trading markets. Su Zimo hesitated for a long time, but in the end he didn't stop at this city and continued forward. This place was somewhat close to Yen Beichen's place of seclusion. If the Shura blade were to be traded in this city, it would be difficult to guarantee that no one would be able to trace it back to this place. The chances of Yen Beichen being exposed were much higher. Su Zimo continued onward. After a full day, he arrived at another bustling ancient city of cultivators, where he transformed into a burly man. What happened next was much simpler. All he needed to do was spread the news of the battle between Yen Beichen and Dao Lord Hatred. This kind of explosive news didn't need to be publicized at all. As long as it was released, it would quickly form a storm and spread by word of mouth, causing a huge uproar. This piece of news was enough to shock the entire cultivation world. Have you heard? The number 1 saber of the Fiend's sex, Dao Lord Hatred, returned and looked for Yen Beichen once more to fight for the title of Shura. In the end, both of them died in battle. Isn't that so? That battle was extremely tragic. It said that mountains collapsed, rivers flowed in reverse, sun and moon dimmed and stars fell. I heard that Yen Beichen initially had the upper hand. However, Dao Lord Hatred went berserk and released his Essence Spirit secret skill. Both of their Essence Spirits clashed head-on and neither of them was spared. Sigh. That was way too tragic. In a restaurant in the ancient city, many cultivators of the cultivation world were gathered and discussing this matter. They described it vividly as though they had seen it with their own eyes. Many times that was how rumors were. As they spread, they would change their original appearance and turn into rumors. Su Zimo sat by the window and drank alone with a calm expression. Who knows if that battle was real or fake? Right then, a cultivator questioned. You don't know about that. The Shura saber was just sold at the Mystic Frost auction house a few days ago and was bought back by the Shura sect. Immediately, a cultivator said, the Shura saber belongs to Shura. If he's not dead, how can he let this saber fall into the hands of outsiders? Who sold the saber? Did you see it? I'm not sure. I think it was a burly man. I heard that it was a woman. Many cultivators began to guess again. After Su Zimo sold the Shura saber, he stayed in the ancient city for a few more days because he was worried that something might happen. For the past few days, There were merely all sorts of rumors and there were no changes. Su Zimo threw down a few spirit stones casually and prepared to leave this place and return to the mountains to inform Yen Beichen. The moment he stood up, a cultivator not far away suddenly said, "By the way, I heard that a cultivator saw the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple." "For real? Where is it?" "It's in Jade Toad Ridge." The whereabouts of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple are unpredictable. Each time they appear, countless cultivators will enter to investigate. To think that they would come to the Middle Continent. I heard that there are countless ancient treasures in that ancient temple, many lost elixirs and cultivation techniques. There are even countless of them. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was one of the lost elixirs. However, the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir could heal Yen Beichen's essence spirit. If the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple truly existed, there might be a 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir inside. However, he had never heard of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple before and had to ask properly. "Fellow Taoists, may I ask what the background of this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple is?" Su Zimo arrived beside the group of cultivators and asked with cupped fists with a smile. This time round, he came to this ancient city to deal with the Shura saber. Worried that there would be complications, he hid his identity and changed his appearance. He even hid his cultivation realm and looked ordinary. "For you?" A cultivator glanced sideways at Su Zimo and smacked his lips. "You want to take a look at the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple as well?" A cultivator asked with a mocking smile. "That's what I was thinking." Su Zimo nodded. "Haha." The group of cultivators exchanged glances and burst into laughter, looking at Su Zimo as though they were looking at an idiot. "You should take a look at yourself first if you want to enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple." A void reversion sneered, "Even I, Dao being Qing Ming, don't dare to step foot into the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Who do you think you are?" Su Zimo's expression turned cold as he released the aura of a Dharma characteristic and said coldly, "Say that again." The moment he said that, the temperature of the entire restaurant plummeted. Although Jining Zhenjuan and void reversions could be seen everywhere in this ancient city, there were not many Dharma Daojun. Most of these cultivators were Jining Zhenjuan and there were only a few void reversions. They were stunned by Su Zimo's Dharma characteristic aura on the spot and their faces turned pale. "Dao Lord, please calm down. I didn't know your identity and offended you. Please spare my life, Dao Lord." The void reversion was so scared that he broke out in sweat and bowed repeatedly. The crowd of cultivators who had been laughing earlier also didn't dare to say a word. If the Dharma Daojun was enraged and wanted to kill them, no one could stop him. Chapter 1253. Right now, Su Zimo was only revealing the aura of the Dharma characteristic realm. If he were to reveal his true appearance and name, the group of cultivators would be scared out of their wits and kneel on the ground with wobbly legs. One of the cultivators said hurriedly, "We don't know the background of this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple either. We only heard that this ancient temple first appeared in the South region more than 100 years ago. Thereafter, every once in a while, the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple would appear somewhere in Tianhuang mainland, attracting countless cultivators who would flock over." A hint of confusion flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. That was strange. For example, ancient ruins and cave abodes of predecessors were mostly fixed in one place. This was the first time Su Zimo had heard of an ancient temple that was elusive. "I heard that when the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple descended in the South region, a cultivator entered by mistake and obtained an extremely powerful ancient dermic weapon. It caused quite a commotion and more cultivators headed forth to explore." Pausing for a moment, the cultivator's eyes revealed a hint of fear. "However, it's already not bad if 1 out of 10 cultivators who enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple can come out alive." Su Zimo frowned and asked, "What are the cultivators who went to explore?" "The lowest is the Dharma characteristic realm. I heard that there are some conjoint body mighty figures as well." The cultivator at the side rushed to answer. Su Zimo asked, something happened to conjoint body mighty figures after entering the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? I heard that over the years, at least 100 conjoint body mighty figures entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and never came out. A cultivator grimaced with a wary expression. 100 conjoint body mighty figures. That was not a small number. For example, Dragon Tiger sect, one of the upper sects, had less than 10 conjoint body mighty figures. From the looks of it, this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was definitely a dangerous place. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, "Even so, there are still cultivators who want to enter and explore?" "That's right." A void reversion nodded. It said that cultivators who can survive the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple have indeed obtained many benefits, such as lost ancient elixirs and top-tier cultivation techniques. I even heard that there was once a Dharma Daojun in his twilight years who entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and obtained some sort of opportunity to break through to the conjoint body realm. Will there be a 9 Revolutions Soul Return elixir in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Su Zimo asked again. A cultivator said hurriedly, "I heard that a conjoint body mighty figure once came out alive and obtained the 9 Revolutions Soul Return elixir." Su Zimo nodded. He had already made his decision. No matter how dangerous this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was, he had to give it a try. Su Zimo already had a plan. He left the restaurant and prepared to bid farewell to Yen Beichen before heading to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. In the bamboo forest deep in the mountains. Over the past few days, the traces left behind by the battle had already been cleaned up. Given the capabilities of Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran, they built a new wooden hut with ease and sat there in a simple manner. "What? You want to go to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple?" In the wooden hut, Yen Beichen shook his head resolutely when he heard Su Zimo's plan. "No, that's too dangerous. First, you know about the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple?" Su Zimo asked. "I don't know much either. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple is rather mysterious. Although it has only appeared for more than 100 years, countless conjoint body mighty figures have died within it. You're only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. You must not go." Su Zimo shook his head in silence. It was clear that he had made up his mind. Yen Beichen said earnestly, "Zimo, the descent of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple in the Middle Continent will definitely attract many paragons and monster incarnates. At that time, all the heroes will arrive and even conjoint body mighty figures will appear. It's too risky for you to go alone." Su Zimo smiled. "Back then, I only heard that Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others wanted to cause trouble for me in 100 Refinement Sect. Brother Yen headed there alone as well and killed 9 Tao Lords single-handedly outside 100 Refinement Sect." Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo said softly, "At that time, Brother Yen had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm as well." Su Zimo could not forget that scene to this day. How heroic was that? That was the righteousness of the Shura. Where righteousness was, even if there were millions of people, he would still advance. Yen Beichen was only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. However, he did not hesitate and fought against Tao Lord Immortal Sword and other Tao Lords who had been famous for a long time. As a result, his essence spirit was injured and had yet to recover. Since there was a chance that the 9 Revolutions Soul Return elixir was in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo had to give it a try even if it was a tiger's den or a mountain of blades or a sea of flames. Yen Beichen sighed softly and did not persuade him anymore. Their personalities were different and the saber techniques they cultivated were different. However, they were all righteous and loyal people. Pondering for a moment, Yen Beichen said, "I heard that the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple has just descended, but there's a dermic power barrier outside. Cultivators will only be able to barge in after a period of time when the dermic power barrier weakens. Zimo, don't be in a hurry to go. During this period of time, stay here and cultivate properly. If you can reach the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm, your heaven and earth Dharma characteristic will improve. With 3 Dharma characteristics, your combat strength will definitely rise by a level and you'll be able to protect yourself." "Yes," Su Zimo nodded. "I gained quite a bit from the battle with hatred. I'm about to calm down and comprehend it properly. Zimo, I'll go with you when the time comes. Qin Pianran said, this matter concerns Beichen. I can't let you take the risk alone. There's no need, Su Zimo rejected with a smile. I'm a lone wolf. If I encounter danger, I can escape in time. If there's anyone else around, I'll be restricted instead. Furthermore, brother is injured. Sister Qin, you can just accompany him here and wait for my good news. Because of Yen Beichen, the two of them had always addressed each other as fellow Taoists. However, it seemed distant and they had long changed the way they addressed each other. Qin Pianran was a little hesitant. Yen Beichen said, let Zimo go alone. The trip to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple this time round will probably alarm the paragons and monster incarnates of many super sections. If you go, you might cause other trouble. Qin Pianran nodded. She was a cultivator of Sword Sect. Now that she was with the infamous Shura of the Fiend sects, Sword Sect had probably chased her out of the sect a long time ago and viewed her as a traitor of the immortal sects, a disgrace to Sword Sect. If she encountered an old friend of Sword Sect, there was a high chance that they would clash. At that thought, Qin Pianran gave up on that thought. She stood up and bowed deeply to Su Zimo, saying sincerely, thank you, Zimo. Sister Qin, you're welcome. Su Zimo hurriedly helped her up. Qin Pianran smiled. I can't help much either. During this period of time, I'll make a few side dishes for you to try every day. At the side, Yen Beichen could not help but praise, Pianran's culinary skills are really good. I'll enjoy it too. At their level of cultivation, they had long reached the realm of fasting. However, even immortals had the desire to eat and could not avoid it. For the next month, Su Zimo stayed in the bamboo forest and cultivated in silence. Finally, after a month, he sensed the opportunity to break through. Chapter 1254. It took him less than 6 years to advance from the early-stage Dharma characteristic realm to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. This cultivation speed could be said to be shockingly fast. One had to know that the further one's cultivation progressed, the more time and energy it would take to break through a small realm. Although it was only the early stage to mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm, it was normal for some Dharma Daojun to spend hundreds or even thousands of years. The reason why Su Zimo was able to break through to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm in 6 years was partly because of his 5,000 years of accumulation in the Tao inheritance ground. The other reason was his battle with Tao Lord Hatred. Not only did this battle give Su Zimo many insights, it also gave him immense pressure. His 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were almost suppressed by the 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic. Under that pressure, his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics grew rapidly and became even more condensed. Everything happened naturally after he broke through to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. As for his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, they had already risen to a height of 87 feet. The heaven and earth Dharma characteristics of the previous number 1 of the Dharma characteristic rankings were only of this level. Although Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was 89 feet tall, it was only a 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic when he became the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic rankings. Given Su Zimo's current combat strength, he could sweep through all Tao Lords of the same cultivation realm. Even ordinary conjoint body mighty figures were not his match. Of course, if he encountered some paragons and monster incarnates of the conjoint body realm, especially conjoint body mighty figures of super sects, it was unknown if Su Zimo could defeat them. However, one thing was certain, even if it was a conjoint body mighty figure of a super sect, it would be impossible for them to kill him like before. With 387 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, even if he was surrounded by conjoint body mighty figures, Su Zimo would be able to carve out a bloody path. Of course, the dangers of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple did not come from other cultivators. The mysterious Ancient Temple was a dangerous place to begin with. Nobody knew what dangers there were inside. The cultivators who walked out alive did not encounter any danger. As for the cultivators who encountered danger, nobody knew what they saw either. That was because they had all died inside. This day, Su Zimo broke through to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. He bade farewell to Yen Beichen and prepared to head to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Zimo, you must be careful. If you see that things aren't going well, don't force yourself. Retreat in time. Yen Beichen warned, after all, only my primordial spirit is injured. Nothing must happen to you. Don't worry. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. When I come back, I still want to drink with Big Brother. All right, I'll wait for you. Yen Beichen also laughed. After that, Su Zimo leaped up and a cloud floated under his feet. He sped off into the distance and soon disappeared. Sword Sect, Immortal Sword Palace. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was seated within his Tao residence with Tao Lord Cloud Rain beside him. Both of them had once escaped from the hands of Yen Beichen. After that calamity, their relationship became even closer and they met often. You're saying that Hatred and Shura both died in battle? Tao Lord Immortal Sword frowned slightly and asked when he heard the news brought over by Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Tao Lord Cloud Rain nodded. That's the rumor outside. The exact situation of that battle is a mess and there are different versions of it. None of the cultivators witnessed it personally. That's impossible. Tao Lord Immortal Sword shook his head. Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked, what do you mean? Tao Lord Immortal Sword harumphed. That might be able to deceive others, but how can it be hidden from us? Both of us fought against Shura. Although we lost, Shura didn't have it easy either and his essence spirit must have been injured. Although injuries to the essence spirit are difficult to heal, it's not impossible. I heard that an elder of Elixir Yang sect once gave Shura a 9 revolutions soul return elixir, Tao Lord Cloud Rain said indifferently. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said, even if Shura's essence spirit is fine, it's only been 20 years. His cultivation is at most at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. However, Hatred is at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. From the moment he attacked until now, he suppressed a titular disciple of the Fiend Sex without even using his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. No matter how strong Shura is, how can he cross realms and die in battle with Hatred? You mean to say that Hatred killed Shura? Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked. It's hard to say. There's definitely something fishy about this. Tao Lord Immortal Sword shook his head. Pausing for a moment, Tao Lord Cloud Rain seemed to have recalled something and suddenly said, right, have you found your childhood sweetheart, junior sister? At the mention of this, a dark look flashed through Tao Lord Immortal Sword's eyes. Not yet. Tao Lord Cloud Rain said with a fake smile, I heard that your junior sister was captured by Shura back then. She's probably dead by now, right? No, Tao Lord Immortal Sword replied coldly. Qin Pianran's life symbol was in Sword Sect and was intact. It was clear that she was definitely not dead. Oh! Tao Lord Cloud Rain laughed. That's interesting. She was captured by Shura who attained his Tao through killing. However, she didn't die or return. Between a single man and a single woman. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression darkened completely as he said coldly, if that SL*T is truly involved with Shura of the Fiend Sex, she'll be the disgrace of Sword Sect. If I find her, I'll definitely kill her personally. At that moment, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had completely forgotten that the SL*T he was referring to had once saved his life. There are so many people. If she wants to hide, who can find her? Tao Lord Cloud Rain shrugged. Not necessarily, Tao Lord Immortal Sword said proudly. There's a successor of a place that knows about heaven and earth and can deduce everything. Enigma Palace? Tao Lord Cloud Rain narrowed his eyes. Right then, outside the Tao Talisman door, a cultivator with fluttering sleeves strode over. His feet did not touch the ground and he was handsome. He wore a Confucian crown and held a folding fan in his hands with a faint smile on his face. Tao Lord Cloud Rain scanned the person's spirit consciousness with his spirit consciousness. He could not see through the cultivation realm of that cultivator. Tao Lord Immortal Sword stood up to welcome him with a smile and said loudly, fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, you've come from afar. Pardon me for not welcoming you. It's fine, there's no need to stand on ceremony between us. Heavenly Secrets' smile was warm and refreshing without any sense of conflict. Tao Lord Immortal Sword introduced to Tao Lord Cloud Rain. This is fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace. This is Cloud Rain Sex. Before Tao Lord Immortal Sword could finish, Tao Lord Heavenly Secret smiled. 5,000 years ago, he was the second on the Dharma characteristic ranking and is now the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect. Tao Lord Cloud Rain nodded silently. He was certain that they had never met before. However, Heavenly Secrets was able to know of his identity and background. He was indeed capable. As the number one of the Dharma characteristic ranking and the titular disciple of Sword sect, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had a noble status. It was not strange that he could befriend cultivators of Enigma Palace. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said, "Fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, I won't stand on ceremony with you. I invited you here because I want you to help me find someone." She was originally a cultivator of my sword sect, and her name was Qin Pian Ran. Tianji shook his head and said, "Just by knowing a name, I want to find this person. With my means, I haven't reached that level yet." "What if you have her life token?" Tao Lord Immortal Sword asked with narrowed eyes. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. "That'll be easy." Chapter 1255. He was able to deduce the location of the other party by relying on a jade slip. Such ability could really be said to be extraordinary and unfathomable. There was naturally a reason why Enigma Palace could become a super sect of Tianhuang mainland and remain standing for so long. Cultivators of Enigma Palace rarely participated in the fights between the various factions of the cultivation world. Cultivators of Enigma Palace would never fight for the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking or Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic ranking. However, no one dared to underestimate cultivators of Enigma Palace. This generation's titular disciple of Enigma Palace, Lin Xuanji, was able to save Su Zimo from Di Yin's hands in the Dao inheritance ground. Even after being hunted down by Di Yin for more than 10 days, he was still alive and kicking. That was proof of his capabilities. Tao Lord Cloud Rain had met Lin Xuanji before. However, he felt that Heavenly Secrets was even more mysterious and unfathomable than Lin Xuanji. He was wary of cultivators like Heavenly Secrets who were omniscient, insightful, and had strange methods, afraid that the other party would see through him. However, Tao Lord Cloud Rain was shrewd and praised with a chuckle on the surface. "Fellow Taoist, you're truly capable. I'm impressed." "Those things aren't worth mentioning." Heavenly Secrets still had a faint smile on his face. "I can't divine everyone either. Given your cultivation realm, fellow Taoist Cloud Rain, I won't be able to divine it even if you give me a destiny token." Heavenly Secrets seemed to have seen through Tao Lord Cloud Rain's worries and remarked casually. He continued, "As for the Qin Pian Ran that immortal sword mentioned, it's easier. However, given that woman's cultivation realm, she might be able to sense something." "Right." Suddenly, Tao Lord Immortal Sword asked, "Regarding the battle a few days ago, Shura and Tao Lord Hatred died in battle. What do you think, fellow Taoist?" "If I'm not wrong, Hatred should be dead," Heavenly Secrets said indifferently. "As for Shura, I can't divine it yet. I don't believe that Shura can kill Hatred. He's not at that level yet. However, if it wasn't Shura, who else could have killed Hatred?" Tao Lord Immortal Sword frowned. Given his combat strength, even conjoint body mighty figures might not be able to kill him. Tianji remained silent as well. He had yet to reach the realm of omniscience. Tao Lord Immortal Sword pondered for a moment and a name flashed through his mind. Narrowing his eyes, he murmured, "Could it be him?" "Who?" Tao Lord Cloud Rain could not help but ask. "Araki Takashi." Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, "I heard that Araki Takashi entered the Dharma characteristic realm and condensed 2 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics. He destroyed Dragon Tiger sect and made the mighty figures of the North region submit to him. The entire world bowed to him and his reputation has already reached an extreme." "You're saying that Araki Takashi has come to Central State?" A cold glint flashed through Tao Lord Cloud Rain's eyes as well. Both of them hated Su Zimo to the bone. The clones that they had cultivated for many years had been destroyed in the myriad Demon Valley. Thereafter, they were intercepted by Shura outside 100 Refinement Sect and almost lost their lives because of Su Zimo as well. Furthermore, the heaven-slaying sword art that Dao Lord Immortal Sword could not forget was snatched away by Su Zimo as well. This matter was like a thorn that had been stuck in his heart for so many years. It shouldn't be Araki Takashi. He's only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm, and there's nothing to fear with 285 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Tianji smiled gently. At the very least, given your current combat strength, fellow Taoist Immortal Sword, you can suppress him by releasing a 89 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Yes, Dao Lord Immortal Sword nodded. However, given that lad's capabilities, I'm afraid I won't be able to stop him if he wants to escape. His potential is too great and he's ultimately a huge problem. If we want to deal with Araki Takashi, we'll have to seek your help, fellow Taoist Tianji. Sure, Tianji nodded. Dao Lord Cloud Rain looked at Tianji and suddenly said, I heard that the titular disciple of this generation's Enigma Palace is rather close to Araki Takashi. Tianji's expression was unchanged and his smile did not diminish. Lin Xuanji? Fufu, he can't stop me if I want to deal with someone. Dao Lord Cloud Rain understood. It was clear that Xuanji and Tianji were not on the same side. There's something else. Suddenly, Dao Lord Cloud Rain said, I heard that the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple has descended in the Middle Continent. Since the three of us are gathered, why don't we head over to investigate? Given our capabilities, we'll definitely be able to resolve any dangers we encounter. Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Dao Lord Immortal Sword was tempted as well. It was said that there were many treasures and secret skills in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. He had already cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. If he entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and obtained 1 or 2 treasures and some opportunities, he should be able to advance to the conjoint body realm immediately. I advise the two of you not to go. Ever since Tianji entered the cave abode, he had been smiling the entire time. However, the smile on his face vanished when he heard the words Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Fellow Taoist, do you know something? Dao Lord Immortal Sword's heart skipped a beat and he could not help but ask. Tianji merely shook his head and a strange sanguine glint flashed through the depths of his eyes as he sneered, those cultivators who joined in are merely greedy and insatiable people. In the end, they'll only end up benefiting others. Jade Toad Ridge was originally an ordinary mountain range and forest in the Middle Continent. Mountains like this could be seen everywhere in the Middle Continent. However, in the past month, Jade Toad Ridge has become lively with many cultivators from all directions gathered. Furthermore, as time passed by, more and more cultivators arrived at Jade Toad Ridge. What was even more frightening was that the cultivation realms of those cultivators were extremely high. Even those who stood on the periphery were at the Void Reversion realm. Almost all the cultivators who dared to venture deep into Jade Toad Ridge were Dharma Daojun. In the depths of Jade Toad Ridge, there were even traces of conjoint body mighty figures. The reason why all these powerful cultivators were gathered was because of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple that suddenly appeared in Tianhuang mainland more than 100 years ago. This day, Su Zimo arrived at Jade Toad Ridge. Many void reversions lingered outside Jade Toad Ridge. They did not dare to venture deep and gathered together to discuss. Have you heard? A precious treasure has appeared in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple this time round. What? It's said to be a treasure from tens of thousands of years ago. It's 2 Buddha beads that were lost by some Mingwang prayer beads. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. There were 6 Buddha beads in the Mingwang prayer beads that corresponded to different dermic seals and daiming mantras. Right now, Su Zimo was wearing 4 Buddha beads on the Mingwang prayer beads on his left wrist. 2 of them were long lost and there was no news of them for tens of thousands of years. The 2 strongest daiming dermic seals were imprinted on the 2 Buddha beads. To think that the 2 Buddha beads would be in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Under normal circumstances, Su Zimo should be happy to hear about the whereabouts of the Buddha beads. However, for some reason he felt that something was amiss. It was normal for the Buddha beads to be in the ancient temple. However, this ancient temple only appeared more than 100 years ago. Why would the Buddha beads that were lost for tens of thousands of years be inside? Su Zimo pondered for a long time but could not figure it out. He shook his head and entered Jade Toad Ridge. Be it for the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir or the 2 Buddha beads, he had to enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple to investigate. Chapter 1256. As they ventured deeper, the number of Dharma Daojun gathered at Jade Toad Ridge increased. There were even more than 1,000 of them. Su Zimo continued forward and finally caught sight of the legendary Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Initially, he was puzzled. It was just an ancient temple. How many places could there be and what was there to explore? Even the ancient temple might not be able to accommodate so many cultivators gathered. However, the moment Su Zimo caught sight of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, a deep shock flashed through his eyes. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was way too huge. Or rather, the ancient temple could no longer be described as simply huge. Instead, it was majestic, like a massive object that had experienced the baptism of endless time and was located in the depths of the mountain ridge. The capital of Great Zhou was already majestic enough to accommodate tens of millions of people. However, this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was dozens of times larger than the capital of Great Zhou. Su Zimo arrived outside the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and stood in midair. Compared to the ancient temple, his figure was like a speck of dust. It was no wonder why so many cultivators flocked to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Even Su Zimo was shocked when he saw the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. He would not believe that there were no treasures in the ancient temple. Su Zimo looked at the ancient temple in a daze. The ancient temple seemed to have turned into a bottomless abyss that wanted to devour everything. Suddenly, Su Zimo felt his heart skip a beat. His heart skipped a beat. This was a whim and a warning from his spirit perception. It was definitely not a coincidence. Seems like this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple is truly a place of great danger. Su Zimo lamented internally and looked around with a grim expression. He was already on guard before entering the ancient temple. There are so many experts here this time round. If a treasure truly appears, it's going to cause a bloodbath. That's for sure. I heard that more than 10 Dao Lords from the previous Dharma characteristic ranking are here. That's right. I heard that 2 Buddha beads have appeared and Monk Black Gold of Diamond Monastery, the number 2 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking, has arrived. Back when Monk Black Gold was fighting for the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking, he only lost to Dao Lord Immortal Sword. I wonder how high his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic has reached after 1,000 years. In my opinion, even the Dharma Daojun has to step aside. At that time, the ancient temple will become a battlefield for conjoint body mighty figures. Most of the time, it's about opportunities and fate. Although conjoint body mighty figures are strong, they might not be able to obtain treasures. Many Dharma Daojun were lingering near the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Su Zimo could clearly see that there was a thin dermic power barrier around the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. As time passed by, the dermic power was gradually weakening. It wouldn't be long before this magic power barrier wouldn't be able to stop the cultivators here. Su Zimo attracted a lot of attention when he arrived near the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, these cultivators only glanced at him and did not pay any more attention to him. Almost everyone in the cultivation world knew about Lord Araki Takashi. However, not many cultivators had seen him before. Most of the Dharma Daojun present had been famous for a long time. As for Su Zimo, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and did not have the chance to interact with the Dharma Daojun present. Furthermore, all the cultivators were focused on the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple right now, and Su Zimo's arrival did not cause much of a commotion. Right then, more than 10 cultivators arrived not far away. They wore the robes of Chaos Essence Sect and had powerful auras. It was Dharma Daojun of Chaos Essence Sect. The Dao Lord in the lead of Chaos Essence Sect rode on a rat that was as large as an elephant. It was covered in golden fur and its eyes were small and sharp. It bared its sharp teeth with a ferocious aura. There was definitely a deep feud between Su Zimo and Chaos Essence Sect. Chaos Essence Sect's hatred for Su Zimo surpassed even that of sects such as Glass Palace. In this generation, Chaos Essence Sect had two monster incarnates, Yi Tiancheng and Di Yin. They were known as the Chaos Essence Twin Paragons and were the hope of Chaos Essence Sect's prosperity. Unfortunately, those two monster incarnates died in the hands of Su Zimo one after another. That was a huge blow to Chaos Essence Sect. Later on, Chaos Essence Sect's half-martial ancestor tried to kill Su Zimo and even chased him to the Dragon Burial Valley. A conjoined body mighty figure died there and shocked Tianhuang mainland. That was the end of the assassination attempt on Su Zimo. Chaos Essence Sect lost troops and generals and suffered a huge blow. In just more than 10 years, Su Zimo reforged Qinglian's true body and returned domineeringly. As for Chaos Essence Sect, there were no more outstanding monster incarnates who rose in all these years. Su Zimo's killing of Di Yin and Yi Tiancheng was akin to severing Chaos Essence Sect's fortune. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud of Chaos Essence Sect is here. He was ranked 11th in the previous Dharma characteristic realm. It's said that the demon beast beneath Dao Lord Sunset Cloud is a pure-blooded ferocious beast, the gold-devouring rat. It specializes in devouring weapons to cultivate and is extremely ferocious. Furthermore, the gold-devouring rat has an extremely sharp sense of smell and can smell many metal-type treasures. Even with layers of barriers, the gold-devouring rat's sense of smell can't be blocked. I heard that the gold-devouring rat doesn't even fancy ordinary treasures. Some cultivators pointed at the gigantic rat beneath Dao Lord Sunset Cloud and whispered. Right then, the gold-devouring rat seemed to have sensed something and stuck its nose out repeatedly, sniffing the air wildly. Finally, it turned around and looked towards Su Zimo. An obscure spirit consciousness fluctuation was transmitted between the gold-devouring rat and Dao Lord Sunset Cloud. Before long, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud looked over and fixed his gaze on Su Zimo. Su Zimo looked straight with a calm expression. The corners of Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's lips curled up as he sneered internally. He led the dozens of Dao Lords behind him towards Su Zimo. The dozens of Dharma Dao Jun gradually spread out. Although they seemed to be standing casually, they vaguely surrounded Su Zimo. Look over there. Something's happening. Some cultivators noticed that and exclaimed excitedly. That gold-devouring rat must have discovered some treasure and Dao Lord Sunset Cloud is going to snatch it. That cultivator doesn't belong to any sect and came alone. Furthermore, he's only at the Dharma characteristic realm. If he has treasures with him, who else is he going to snatch if not him? Many cultivators watched coldly from the sidelines and watched the commotion. Naturally, no one would stand up for Su Zimo for something as such. Furthermore, the other party was a super sect like Chaos Essence Sect. Right then, a cultivator in the crowd exclaimed softly, "That green-robed cultivator looks familiar. He seems to be the legendary Dao Lord Araki Takashi." The words Dao Lord Araki Takashi caused quite a stir. However, the surroundings of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple were bustling and Dao Lord Sunset Cloud and the others did not hear it at all. That can't be. Dao Lord Araki Takashi is far away in the North region. Why would he specially come to the Middle Continent for a Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Green robes, black hair and delicate features. He seems to match the legendary Araki Takashi. Not far away, a commotion broke out in the crowd. At that moment, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud had already arrived before Su Zimo on his gold-devouring rat and looked down at Su Zimo from above. Chapter 1257. Hand it over. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud arrived before Su Zimo and did not say anything more to Su Zimo. In fact, he could not even be bothered to ask about Su Zimo's name and sect. He had the confidence and backing. Firstly, the Dharma characteristic ranking included almost all the strongest paragons and monster incarnates in Tianhuang mainland. As the 11th on the Dharma characteristic ranking, he had never seen this green-robed cultivator before. If this person was not even on the Dharma characteristic ranking, he was naturally not qualified to fight against him. Secondly, he had Chaos Essence sect backing him. However, this green-robed cultivator did not have any insignia of a sect on him. He was alone and was most likely an itinerant cultivator. If an itinerant cultivator had a treasure that could tempt the gold-devouring rat, what else did he have to worry about? Su Zimo frowned slightly and asked, "Hand what over?" "You have a treasure of Chaos Essence sect on you." Tao Lord Sunset Cloud said coldly, "This demon beast of mine can sense it clearly. I advise you to hand it over obediently and you might be able to keep your life." Many surrounding cultivators sneered secretly. That was clearly nonsense. Even if this green-robed cultivator had a treasure of Chaos Essence sect on him, how could a beast tell? Initially, Su Zimo was puzzled as to what treasure he had that caught the beast's attention. The only treasures on him that could truly be considered as precious were the Creation Lotus Platform, Mystic Magnet Mountain, and Mingwang Prayer Beads. However, those three treasures were not made of metal. Su Zimo quickly understood. It was Qinglian's true body. His Qinglian's true body was created using the lotus stem of creation Qinglian as bones and lotus leaves as skin, fusing with many connate dermic weapons. Di Yin's Chaos Essence Bell and Dragon Battling Truncheon. Dao Being Glass's Rainbow Glazed Pagoda. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper Saber. Dao Being Zephyr Thunder's Zephyr Thunderhammer. The gold-devouring rat should have sensed the auras of those connate dermic weapons. All these years, Chaos Essence sect is still as domineering as ever. Su Zimo said meaningfully. If one were to carefully ponder over this sentence, they would be able to hear something unusual. However, Tao Lord Sunset Cloud did not take Su Zimo seriously at all. Naturally, he would not figure out what Su Zimo meant. He said proudly, "Primordial Chaos sect has always done things this way. Initially, I thought that your sect would be more reserved after the fall of the Primordial Chaos duo. I didn't expect that there would be no progress." Su Zimo's expression turned cold. "I think you're courting death." Tao Lord Sunset Cloud narrowed his eyes and suddenly exuded a killing intent. The other dozen or so Chaos Essence sect Tao Lords had ugly expressions as well. At that time, Di Yin and Yi Tiancheng were extremely famous and invincible among their peers. Who would have thought that they would be killed by Araki Takashi one after another? This could be considered a scar for the Hunyuan sect. Now that this green-robed cultivator before them was tearing at that scar in front of so many cultivators, how could Chaos Essence sect not be enraged? Su Zimo said indifferently, "You guys had better not provoke me. I'm here today for the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and don't want to cause trouble." That was indeed what Su Zimo was thinking. Everything in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was unknown. He did not want to fight with others outside before entering the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and seeing anything. Of course, that was also his final warning. However, that warning completely enraged Tao Lord Sunset Cloud and the others. "Who do you think you are to threaten me?" Tao Lord Sunset Cloud cursed and slapped his storage bag, summoning a flying sword that pierced toward Su Zimo. The flying sword transformed into a streak of light and shone with a bedazzling light. It was extremely fast and arrived instantly. Su Zimo stood on the spot without moving at all. In fact, he did not even summon his dermic weapon or dodge. However, his gaze burned brighter as he suddenly spoke. "I'm Araki Takashi." These 4 words were like a clap of thunder, exploding in the crowd. Immediately after, just as the flying sword was about to pierce Su Zimo's glabella, he reached out with his fair palm and grabbed the incoming flying sword. There were 6 dermic patterns on the flying sword. It was a connate Tao Lord dermic weapon. It was sharp and could slice through metal like mud. Even supreme-grade Tao Lord dermic weapons could be severed by a single slash, let alone a body of flesh and blood. However, under countless gazes, the connate Tao Lord dermic weapon was gripped tightly by Su Zimo's palm and could not move at all. The most frightening thing was that there was no trace of blood on Su Zimo's palm. In other words, the connate Tao Lord dermic weapon could not even pierce through Su Zimo's skin. He was safe and sound despite receiving a connate Tao Lord dermic weapon with his body. How was that possible? The crowd was in an uproar. What shocked many cultivators even more were the words, "I'm Araki Takashi." There was nothing more intimidating than these 4 words. There were countless Dao titles in Tianhuang mainland. However, there was only one person who dared to use the Dao title Araki Takashi. Dao Lord Araki Takashi had descended on the Middle Continent. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was stunned as well. He had calculated everything and even imagined how Su Zimo would deal with it. He had even prepared many backup plans. However, he did not expect this. "I'm Araki Takashi." Those words caused his mind to rumble and he was momentarily dazed. "Not only do I dare to threaten you, I even dare to kill you." Taking advantage of the moment when Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was dazed, Su Zimo suddenly attacked and threw the flying sword in his hand in reverse, piercing towards Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's head at an even faster speed. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was a paragon ranked 11th on the Dharma characteristic ranking after all. In a flash, he reacted and hurriedly condensed his essence spirit, controlling the incoming flying sword to deviate to the side. That flying sword was his destiny dharmic weapon. Even so, the power of Su Zimo's sword was almost beyond his control. The flying sword merely deviated slightly and brushed past Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's cheek, creating a bloody wound instantly. If he had reacted slower, the flying sword would have pierced his head. In just an instant, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud broke out in cold sweat. Boom! A phantom rose from Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's body and rose rapidly. Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. After knowing Su Zimo's identity, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud did not dare to be careless and was prepared to release his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic right away to protect himself. However, the moment Su Zimo threw the flying sword, a bedazzling sword chi burst forth from his fingertip. It was white. Killing intent was shocking. Heaven-slaying sword art. The sword chi entered Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's glabella and pierced a bloody hole in his head. His essence spirit was destroyed on the spot and he was deader than dead. Before his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic could truly be condensed, it was killed by the heaven-slaying sword chi. The demon beast, the gold-devouring rat beneath him, was sliced into 2 by the heaven-slaying sword chi as well and died on the spot. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's eyes gradually dimmed. He was still a step too late. If he had released his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, he would not have been defeated so quickly given his combat strength. Unfortunately, in a battle between experts, a single moment was all it took. When Sunset Cloud heard the words "I'm Araki Takashi," he was momentarily dazed. There was no way he could survive. Chapter 1258. Araki Takashi, how dare you? A Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect hollered, "A mighty figure of Chaos Essence Sect is nearby and you dare to be so arrogant? Do you really think that there's no one in Chaos Essence Sect?" Su Zimo sneered and put away Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's storage bag casually. "I don't know if there's anyone in Chaos Essence Sect. However, if this person dares to attack me, I'll kill him." To the cultivators, this was nothing more than normal. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was blind and wanted to snatch Araki Takashi's treasures. Even if he was killed, he deserved it. A Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect had already taken out a communication talisman from his storage bag and crushed it. If nothing went wrong, the conjoint body mighty figure of Chaos Essence Sect would arrive soon. Su Zimo frowned. It was not that he was afraid of Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figures. If he released his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, he could suppress ordinary conjoint body mighty figures and even fight against Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figures. However, the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was about to open and the situation inside was unknown. He would definitely expend a lot of energy condensing his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic to fight against Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figure. It would be troublesome if he encountered anything unexpected in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Furthermore, he had yet to see the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir and Buddha Beads. If the Buddha Beads were to appear, it would trigger a huge battle as well. That was the true test. It was not worth it to fight to the death with Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figure now. At that thought, Su Zimo was prepared to leave and hide for the time being. "What are you doing?" Many Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect shouted when they saw that Su Zimo wanted to leave. They shouted fiercely, "Mighty figures of our sect are about to arrive. Are you trying to escape? Who dares to stop me if I want to leave?" Su Zimo swept his gaze and said in a sinister tone. Although more than 10 Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect surrounded Su Zimo, none of them dared to advance, let alone stop Su Zimo. Over the years, Araki Takashi's reputation was way too great. It was said that Araki Takashi had condensed an 80 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma form when he was at the Void Reversion Realm. Up till now, the dozen or so Dharma Daojun had yet to condense an 80-foot tall cosmic form. Tao Lord Sunset Cloud, the only one who had cultivated a 84 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, was killed by Araki Takashi before he could release his Dharma characteristic. Later on, it was said that Araki Takashi entered the Dharma characteristic realm and cultivated two 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. With such terrifying battle prowess, they simply did not dare to contend against him. "Where is Araki Takashi?" Right at this moment, a stern shout sounded out from afar, and it contained boundless rage and killing intent. "It's Elder Lei Lai." The Tao Lords of Primordius all revealed looks of delight. Su Zimo no longer hesitated and sped off into the distance. "Elder Lei Lai is here. Let's see where else you can escape to." When the Tao Lords of Primordius Chaos Essence sect heard that a conjoined body mighty figure of the sect had arrived, they became bolder and shifted horizontally, attacking one after another to block Su Zimo's path. In their opinion, since Elder Lei Lai had already rushed over, Su Zimo would definitely not dare to be entangled with them given his guilty conscience. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo's expression turned cold when he saw that the Dharma Daojun did not know what was good for them and even dared to attack him. He closed his sword fingers and conjured the heaven-slaying sword art, releasing more than 10 sword chi in succession. After cultivating for close to 5,000 years in the Tao inheritance ground, Su Zimo's comprehension of the heaven-slaying sword art was no longer comparable to back then. Although Tao Lord Hatred could receive the heaven-slaying sword chi with his terrifying combat strength, it did not mean that the other Dharma Daojun could withstand the killing power of the heaven-slaying sword chi as well. Bang, bang, bang. The moment the Dharma Daojun sensed danger, they released their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics right away. One after another, heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that were more than 70 feet tall rose from the ground and emitted powerful auras with wanton might. However, the moment those heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were formed, the heaven-slaying sword chi had already descended. Sword chi slashed the bodies of the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics one after another. Right in front of everyone, the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were sliced into two by the white sword chi and dissipated instantly. Even heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that were more than 70 feet tall could not defend against the heaven-slaying sword chi. What was even more frightening was that after shattering the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, the remnant might of the heaven-slaying sword chi still landed on some Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect. Some Dharma Daojun could not dodge in time and were sliced into two by the heaven-slaying sword chi on the spot. The sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi surged into their bodies and destroyed the life force of their bodies instantly. Even their consciousnesses were sliced into pieces and their essence spirits were destroyed. Some Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect made a prompt decision to abandon their bodies right away and escape with their essence spirits. That was the only reason why they managed to survive. The cultivators who saw this all sucked in a breath of cold air. It was way too tragic. Those Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect were not nobodies in the cultivation world. Otherwise, they would not have dared to enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Unfortunately, those Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect were killed on the spot by the sword chi released from Su Zimo's fingertip. In the cultivation world, there had always been all sorts of rumors about Araki Takashi. Things like a strong physique and invincible among his peers. Many cultivators were skeptical about those rumors. It was only now that they saw this scene that the cultivators realized how terrifying Su Zimo was from the depths of their hearts. On the other side, A Dharma Daojun from Sword Sect who carried a sword on his back had a grim expression. He crushed a message talisman right away and summoned a mighty figure of his sect as well. Dao Lord Purple Sword. 9th on the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. This is one of the 3 ancient sword arts, the heaven-slaying sword art. You won't be able to defend against it. Dao Lord Purple Sword raised his voice. After the battle in the Dao Inheritance Ground, many cultivators knew that Su Zimo had cultivated an extremely powerful sword technique. However, not many people knew the origin of that sword technique. The cultivators of Sword Sect naturally knew. The reason why Sword Sect was able to establish itself was naturally because of the Sword Emperor. However, the reason why the Sword Emperor was so famous back then was because he cultivated one of the 3 ancient sword arts. The Sword Sect's lifeless sword art was also deduced from this sword art. Araki Takashi, how dare you injure a cultivator of Chaos Essence Sect? Right then, Elder Lei Lai of Chaos Essence Sect arrived. His beard fluttered and his eyes shone with endless killing intent as he attacked brazenly. An enormous pressure descended upon them. That was the might of a conjoint body. Instantly, the world trembled. Su Zimo glanced at Elder Lei Lai and smirked. He sneered internally and lightning arcs burst forth from his body as a pair of dermic power wings grew behind him. Thereafter, Su Zimo vanished from the spot and turned into a golden beam of light that traversed thousands of kilometers in the blink of an eye at an extremely fast speed. Although Elder Lei Lai's strength was strong, he missed. Su Zimo had already fled far away. At that moment, Su Zimo released 3 movement secret skills consecutively. Apart from lightning escape and ethereal wings, there was also an escape technique he comprehended in the Dao Inheritance Ground called Earth Traversing Golden Light. The speed of the 3 secret skills released at the same time was not inferior to blood escape. Even conjoint body mighty figures could not catch up to him. After missing his attack, Elder Lei Lai did not hesitate and chased after Su Zimo right away, wanting to kill him there and then. However, no matter how he channeled his blood chi, released secret skills and used escape techniques, he could not shorten the distance between him and Su Zimo. Chapter 1259. Haha, so the mighty Dao Lord Araki Takashi is actually a coward. When Elder Lei Lai saw that he could not catch up to Su Zimo, he laughed out loud on purpose, trying to agitate him. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged, and he merely glanced at Elder Lei Lai indifferently behind him without any interest in retorting. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was about to open, and he had no intention of fighting conjoint body mighty figures outside for the time being. Furthermore, he could clearly sense that more than one conjoint body mighty figure was gathering towards him. Chaos Essence Sect was not the only one targeting him. For example, Zephyr Thunder Palace and Sword Sect wanted to kill him and snatch his cultivation techniques and secret skills. The Middle Continent was not comparable to the North region. In the North region, Su Zimo was still feared by the Patriarch in his twilight years beneath the Dragon Burial Valley. However, this was the Middle Continent. Mahayana Patriarchs were not omniscient and omnipotent. The Patriarch of the Dragon Burial Valley was already in his twilight years and had limited energy. There was no way he could have known beforehand what dangers Su Zimo would face. Even if he knew, it would be beyond his reach. That was the reason why Elder Lei Lai dared to attack Su Zimo. Araki Takashi, you established the Wu Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. How heroic are you? Now, you're scurrying away like a rat. Aren't you afraid of being embarrassed? Elder Lei Lai was still unwilling to give up and hollered from behind. Many cultivators rolled their eyes. As a conjoint body mighty figure, he disregarded his status to pursue a Dharma Daojun. To think that he wanted the other party to stop and had the cheek to call him an embarrassment? In their eyes, Elder Lei Lai was like an exasperated idiot who had lost his mind. He no longer had the demeanor of a mighty figure. Boom! Right then, a rumble sounded from the direction of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. The dermic power barrier that was initially enveloping the ancient temple gradually disappeared, attracting the attention of countless cultivators. Even Elder Lei Lai stopped in his tracks and turned around to look. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple had opened. No one was willing to fall behind the opening of the Ancient Temple. If they could enter the Ancient Temple first, there was a high chance they would have the advantage. Although Elder Lei Lai was indignant, he could only give up on hunting down Su Zimo for the time being. Right now, the most important thing was to enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. He was furious and turned back to take a look. However, he realized that Su Zimo had already turned into a streak of golden light and sped towards the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple before him. Fellow Taoist Lei Lai, let's go. At this moment, the mighty figure of the sword sect arrived beside Lei Lai. Just now, he had snuck over to kill Araki Takashi. Unfortunately, Araki Takashi seemed to have sensed the danger in advance and was able to avoid his ambush every time. The mighty figure of the sword sect said, "If we enter the ancient temple, our chances of killing him will be greater." Not bad. Elder Lei Lai nodded. The two of them looked at each other and moved towards the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple at the same time. At that moment, in Jade Toad Ridge, the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was like a massive creature with a gaping mouth as cultivators from all directions swarmed in. Initially, there were only slightly more than 2,000 cultivators who appeared near the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, after the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple opened, many cultivators who were hidden in the surroundings appeared one after another and charged towards the ancient temple, wanting to fight for an opportunity to come out. A single Grand Primordium Ancient Temple attracted more than 5,000 Dharma Daojun. The prosperity of the cultivation civilization of the Middle Continent was clear. There were 4 entrances to the ancient temple that corresponded to the 4 cardinal directions. Su Zimo entered from the north gate and arrived before the ancient temple. He could sense the grandeur of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple even more clearly. The walls of the ancient temple were built from a single gigantic rock without any gaps in the middle. It could be said to be a work of the gods. Su Zimo was vigilant and entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple with the crowd. His vision cleared up after entering the ancient temple. The inside of the ancient temple was like a small world of its own. The space inside was extremely spacious. Under the 4 walls of the ancient temple, there was a row of green lamps. There seemed to be no oil in the lamps as they were all in an extinguished state. There were many portraits carved on the 4 walls. They seemed to be legends related to Buddhism. Of course, the most eye-catching thing on the 4 walls was the engraving of 4 Vajras in the middle. Their bodies were huge and they were 90 feet tall. Their eyes were wide open and their eyeballs were protruding. Their faces were ferocious and fearsome. According to legend, there were 4 guardian Vajras in Buddhism, also known as the 4 heavenly kings of Buddhism. They were respectively Dhritarashtra, 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 and Vaisravana. The portraits on the 4 walls clearly originated from this Buddhist legend. The 4 Vajras glared at each other angrily. Even though it was just a portrait, it exuded an endless amount of majesty. The crowd of cultivators exchanged glances with each other. Their hearts trembled and they subconsciously lowered their heads. Even many conjoint body mighty figures had weaker auras against the furious gazes of the 4 great Vajras, let alone the Dharma Daojun. Su Zimo felt even stranger. From the moment he stepped into the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, his spirit perception had been warning him continuously. But inside the ancient temple, this kind of warning was meaningless. That was because Su Zimo could not tell where the danger came from. It might have originated from the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. It could also have originated from other cultivators. The strangest thing was that Su Zimo felt like he was being spied on the moment he stepped into the ancient temple. However, in the chaotic crowd, he couldn't tell where this feeling of being watched came from. Or rather, it seemed to be coming from all directions. This ancient temple is indeed a little evil. Su Zimo frowned and murmured softly. Many cultivators had already dispersed. Some sped into the ancient temple, wanting to search for other hidden routes and spaces. Some came to the bottom of the walls and looked at the many Buddha statues on the walls, wanting to find out some secrets from them. Some came to a stone pillar that required 10 people to wrap their arms around and circled it. Some cultivators even ran to the green lanterns and sized them up carefully, wanting to tell if the green lanterns were powerful treasures. Su Zimo stood on the spot motionlessly. All of a sudden, there was a loud rumble. Suddenly, a huge stone door descended from above the 4 entrances of the Grand Primordium ancient temple and sealed the entrances tightly. Instantly, the entire hall fell into darkness. Everyone present was Dharma Daojun. Although they could still see their surroundings in the darkness, this sudden change caused quite a stir. What's going on? What happened? Which one of you accidentally triggered some mechanism? The hall was in a mess. Swoosh. At this moment, the green lamps under the surrounding walls suddenly lit up. They were burning with flames, flickering with flickering light. Under the dim lights, the 4 Vajras looked extremely menacing, as though they had suddenly come alive. Many cultivators were shocked. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Even with Su Zimo's temperament, his expression changed starkly as he gasped and felt chills run down his spine. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.